Hey guys, just want to say thanks for tuning in to Wide Awake Horror today. Today we've got some true horror stories for you guys to hear. Now, if you enjoy these stories, as always, please smash that like button. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the family. Now, let's enjoy some new stories.
I almost didn't go. That's how this always starts, right? You get a weird gut feeling, you ignore it, and then months later you're staring at your ceiling at 3 in the morning thinking about how you should just stayed home and watched random videos instead. Her name was Alina. We matched on a dating app I'd only downloaded because my friend wouldn't stop clowning me for still being single. She didn't look fake. No supermodel pictures, no blurry mystery shots, just normal stuff. A mirror selfie in a messy bedroom. A pic with a dog that looked like it hated cameras. A random shot at some late-night diner. She had this half smile and most of them like she knew something nobody else did. We talked for 4 days. Nothing crazy. She was funny in a dry way. Sent voice notes sometimes, which made it feel more real. Her voice was low and calm, kind of lazy. I read her messages in class, at work, even in the bathroom. She asked random questions like what was the worst thing I'd ever done and if I believed in coincidences. I thought it was just her being deep. We agreed to meet at this old train station that got turned into a food court area. Not the busy side with families and kids running around. The side with the smaller vendors and broken vending machines that nobody fixed. She said she liked quiet places. It was raining that day. Not pouring, just enough to make everything look gray and reflective. I got there 10 minutes early because I didn't want to be the guy sprinting in late. My hair was already messed up from the wind. I remember walking up the steps and seeing her immediately. She was already there, standing near the entrance under the metal overhang, arguing with someone. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just some random guy she knew. Maybe her ex. Maybe some dude bothering her. But then I slowed down, because the back of his head looked familiar. Same dark jacket I was wearing. Same haircut. Same stupid way of standing with my shoulders slightly hunched. I stopped walking. He turned slightly to the side and I saw his profile. It was my face. Not similar. Not close. My face. Same small scar on the chin from when I fell off my bike in middle school. Same nose that's slightly crooked. Even the same mole near the left eyebrow. They were arguing. I couldn't hear words, just the tone. Tense. Sharp. He was running his hand through his hair the exact way I do when I'm stressed. I thought I was going insane. I actually checked my phone camera to look at myself, like maybe I'd somehow change. I looked normal, or I thought I did. She suddenly looked past him. Right at me. Her expression didn't change. No shock. No confusion. Just this slow blink, like she was confirming something. The other me followed her gaze and turned around. We locked eyes. I wish I could say something dramatic happened in that moment. That the world tilted or my ears started ringing. It didn't. It was quiet. Just rain hitting the metal roof. He looked just as confused as I felt. Or maybe that's what my face looks like when I'm confused. I don't know anymore. Alina stepped back from him. Then she looked between us like she was comparing two options at a store. I walked closer, not even sure why. My legs just moved. The other me took a step forward at the same time. We stopped a few feet apart. It was like looking into a mirror that had depth. He wasn't copying me. He was moving on his own. Breathing on his own. Alina's eyes were driving back and forth. Not scared. Interested. The other me looked down at his phone, then back at her, then at me. I noticed his phone case was different. Mine was plain black. His had a crack in the corner. That tiny difference made it worse somehow. I checked my own hands, half expecting them to glitch or disappear. Alina finally did something. She pulled out her phone and held it up between us. I saw my own dating profile on her screen. Except the messages weren't the ones I sent. The tone was similar, but the wording was off. More aggressive. More personal. Stuff I would never say. He had apparently told her he loved her after 2 days. Asked her weirdly specific questions about where she lived and when she was alone. My stomach dropped. She lowered the phone and looked at him, then at me. The other me pulled out his phone too and showed his screen. Same app. Same profile picture. Same name. But the message thread was different. According to his phone, I was the one who sent the obsessive messages. The desperate ones. The creepy ones. It felt like my brain was splitting in half trying to process it. There was no way someone just copied my face like that. It wasn't makeup. It wasn't a mask. His skin moved naturally. When he frowned, the tiny line between his eyebrows deepened exactly like mine. Alina stepped even farther back now, almost out of the overhang into the rain. She looked calm. Too calm. The other me suddenly looked angry. He pointed at me, his mouth moving fast. I couldn't hear him clearly over the rain, but I knew what that face meant. Accusation. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My throat felt dry. People were walking by, barely paying attention. Just 3 young adults standing in the rain. Nothing dramatic from the outside. The other me did something that made my blood go cold. He unlocked his phone and held it out toward me. On his screen was my Instagram account. Private photos. Old ones I had archived. Even a picture of my childhood dog that I deleted years ago. Then he swiped. There were screenshots in my bedroom, taken from inside. My bed, my desk, the crack in my ceiling. I stopped breathing. I knew for a fact I never posted those anywhere. I don't even let people inside my apartment. I live alone. He swiped again. A photo of me sleeping. From above. I felt like I was going to throw up. Alina's face changed then. Not scared. Not shocked. Disappointed. She looked at me like I had failed some test. The other me smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a slight curve of the lips. The exact one I do when I think I've won an argument. I stepped back without meaning to. He stepped forward. And that's when I noticed something else. His shoes were wet from rain. Mine were dry. I looked down at the ground. There were 2 sets of footprints leading toward the station. One set from the parking lot. One set from the opposite direction. I had just arrived. Which meant he'd been there longer. Alina suddenly walked past me. Not running. Just casually moving like she was done shopping and picked what she wanted. She stopped beside him. Not me. He didn't even look surprised. She linked her arm through his. I felt something snap in my head. I reached for my phone to call someone, anyone, but my screen lit up with a notification from the dating app. New message from Alina. I looked up. She was still standing right there, next to him. My phone buzzed again. The message preview showed up. It said, "Thanks for coming. Now we know which one is real." I looked at them, then back at my screen. My profile picture started to glitch. For a split second, it wasn't me, it was him. Or maybe it was always him. The other me leaned closer to her and whispered something in her ear. I couldn't hear it. She smiled. Then they both turned and walked into the rain. I stood there frozen, watching my own face disappear into the gray street. I looked down at my phone again. My name at the top of the app had changed. It wasn't my name anymore. It was his. And my message history was gone. Replaced with conversations I didn't recognize. With girls I had never matched with. Conversations that ended suddenly. No replies, just silence after they agreed to meet. I slowly opened my camera. The front-facing screen showed my face. But something was off. The scar on my chin. It was gone. I touched it. My skin was smooth. Like it had never been there. I looked up at the direction they walked. They were completely gone. No sign of them. Just rain. I checked my reflection in the dark window of the station. It was me. But it didn't feel like me. I don't know how long I stood there before I finally left. When I got home, my key didn't work. The lock had been changed. My landlord didn't answer my calls. My social media accounts were logged out. Password changed. Even my email wouldn't let me in. It was like I'd been slowly replaced piece by piece, and I only noticed when it was too late. I went back to the dating app one last time. My profile photo had updated again. It was him and Alina. Standing in my bedroom. My bed behind them. She was smiling at the camera. He was too. I deleted the app. Or I tried to. The icon wouldn't disappear. It just stayed there on my screen. And every night since then, I get notifications. Matches. Messages. Girls agreeing to meet, all using my name. I haven't gone back to that station. I don't use dating apps anymore. But sometimes when I pass a dark window, I check my reflection, just to make sure it still matches. I used to think the worst thing that could happen on a dating app was getting ghosted or catfished with some blurry gym photo from 10 years ago. I did not think the worst case scenario would involve my own couch. I definitely did not think I would ever see myself sitting on it from across the room while holding the phone that was supposedly showing me someone else. It started normal. That's the part that still messes with me. His name was Marcus. We matched on a random Tuesday night when I couldn't sleep and was just scrolling out of boredom. His profile wasn't flashy, just regular pictures. One at a coffee shop, one in his car, one with his little nephew at some park. He looked clean, normal, kind of shy. Not model level or anything, just a decent looking guy with kind eyes. We talked for about a week. He was funny but not try hard funny. He asked about my job, what shows I was reading about online, what I did on weekends. He'd send random pictures of his dog. It felt safe. That's the word I'd use. Safe. By the fourth day, he asked if I'd want to meet up for dinner that Friday. A public place, nothing weird. I said yes. The day before the date, he asked if we could FaceTime first. He said he liked to make sure the vibe was real before meeting. I actually appreciated that. It felt mature, like he wanted to avoid awkwardness. So Friday afternoon, I cleaned my apartment a little. Not deep cleaning, just enough so it didn't look like I live in chaos. I fluffed the pillows on my couch, moved a laundry basket out of the frame, turned on a lamp so the lighting wouldn't be terrible. I remember thinking it was kind of funny how much effort I was putting into a video call. At exactly 6:12 p.m., my phone rang. FaceTime request from Marcus. I took a breath and answered. For half a second, the screen was black. Then the camera switched on. It wasn't his face. It was my living room. From the corner near the ceiling, like someone was holding a phone up high by the bookshelf across from me. I saw my couch, my coffee table, the blue blanket folded at the end. And there I was, sitting in the exact spot I was sitting in real life, phone in hand, looking down at the screen. I froze. On my screen, I could see myself staring at my phone. But in real life, I was staring at my phone. The angle was wrong, though. The FaceTime camera was showing me from across the room, slightly tilted downward, not from my front camera. For a second, my brain tried to make it logical. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe it flipped to my back camera somehow. I slowly lifted my free hand and waved. On the screen, the version of me sitting on the couch did not move. She was still, completely still, just staring down at her phone. My stomach dropped so hard it felt physical. I stood up quickly in real life. On the screen, the girl on the couch kept sitting there for 2 full seconds after I had already stood. Then she slowly stood too. But it was delayed, like bad internet lag. Except the Wi-Fi in my apartment was fine. I turned around. There was no one in my living room. No second phone, no hidden camera, nothing near the bookshelf. But on the screen, the angle didn't change. It stayed fixed in that upper corner perspective. I walked closer to where the camera would have been. On the screen, I saw myself walking toward it. The image got closer and blurrier. But when I reached the actual corner of the room, there was nothing there. Just wall and a tiny spider crack near the ceiling. I looked back down at my phone. The FaceTime call timer was counting up. 0:47, 0:48, 0:49. He hadn't said anything. There was no small video box showing his face. Just that single feed of my own living room. Then the version of me on screen did something I did not do. She tilted her head slightly to the side. In real life, my head was straight. I felt my hands start to shake. The on-screen me slowly smiled. I was not smiling. It wasn't a huge grin, just a small curve, like she knew something. I stumbled backward and almost tripped over the coffee table. In video, she did not stumble. She stayed perfectly balanced. Then, very slowly, she raised her free hand and waved at the camera. At me. My breathing got loud in my ears. I could hear it echoing in my apartment. I spun around again, half expecting to see someone standing behind me, holding another phone. Nothing. The apartment was dead quiet. On the screen, the other me stopped waving. She brought the phone closer to her face. And for the first time, I could see her expression clearly. Her eyes looked tired, dark circles under them that I did not have, her hair slightly messier, like she had been awake longer. She mouthed something. There was no sound coming through the call. Just silence. I stared at her lips, trying to read what she was saying. It looked like she was saying do not. Over and over. Do not, do not, do not. Then the call ended. Just like that. No noise. No goodbye. Just a blank screen. I stood there for a solid minute, not moving. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. He said, "Sorry about that. Weird glitch, want to try again." My hands were sweating so much I almost dropped the phone. I typed back asking if that was some kind of joke. He replied almost instantly, saying, "What do you mean?" I told him what I saw. He sent back a screenshot. It was a picture of himself sitting at his kitchen table, phone in hand. Normal angle. Normal lighting. He said when he called, he just saw a black screen on my end, and then the call dropped. No mention of my living room. No mention of seeing me. I didn't know what to believe. I walked around my apartment checking everything. Windows locked. Closet empty. Bathroom clear. I even looked under my couch like something could be hiding there. Nothing. I went into my phone settings and checked app permissions. No unknown apps. No random camera access. Everything looked normal. For a second, I convinced myself I imagined it. Maybe stress. Maybe my brain filled in something weird during a glitch. Then I opened my photo gallery. There was a new video. Saved at 6:12 p.m. 3 minutes long. I did not record it. My heart felt like it dropped straight into my stomach. I pressed play. It was the same angle as the FaceTime call. From the corner of my living room. The video showed me sitting on the couch waiting, checking my reflection in the black phone screen before the call connected. Then my phone lit up. The video clearly showed the moment I answered. But here's what messed me up the most. In the video, when the call connected, the version of me on the couch looked up directly at the corner camera. Not the phone. At the camera that was filming. Like she knew it was there. Then she slowly turned her head toward the hallway that leads to my bedroom. In real life, during the call, I never looked down that hallway. In the video, she stood up and started walking toward it. But I never did that. The real me, the one watching this video now, had stayed near the couch the entire time. The camera followed her slightly, like someone adjusted to keep her in frame. She walked halfway down the hallway and stopped. Then she looked back toward the living room. Right at the camera. And smiled again. The video ended there. I dropped my phone on the couch and backed away like it could burn me. There is no camera in my hallway. There has never been a camera in my hallway. I called my building manager that night and asked if there were any security cameras inside apartments. He sounded confused and said absolutely not. I didn't sleep in my bedroom that night. I stayed on the couch with all the lights on. Marcus kept texting me, asking if I was okay and if we were still on for dinner. I stopped responding. The next morning, I checked the video again. It was gone. Completely gone from my gallery. But the storage on my phone showed that 3 minutes of space were still used under videos. Like something was still there. I deleted the dating app that afternoon. 2 days later, I got a notification. Not from the app. From FaceTime. Missed call from Marcus. At 3:03 a.m. I never heard it ring. When I checked the call log, it said the call lasted 4 minutes. I was asleep that entire time. Now every time I sit on my couch, I feel like I'm being watched from that top corner near the bookshelf. I haven't moved out yet, but I'm saving up. And I never answered him again. I knew something was wrong when she smiled at her phone instead of me. It wasn't a normal smile either. It wasn't the polite date smile or the fake laugh you give when someone tells a bad joke. It was small and private, like she had just gotten a message meant only for her. The kind of smile you make when you win something and nobody else knows yet. And the worst part is, we were in the middle of talking about fries. Her name was Tessa. We matched on a dating app I had been using on and off for months. I wasn't desperate or anything, just bored most nights after work. I live alone in a small apartment above a grocery store, so when I'm home it's quiet except for carts rattling downstairs. Dating apps felt easier than sitting in silence. Tessa had this artsy vibe. Her pictures were all taken at weird angles. One of her sitting on the floor of a bookstore. One outside a bowling alley at night with the neon lights behind her. She didn't look fake. She looked normal but interesting. Brown hair, kind of serious eyes. We talked for about 5 days before deciding to meet. Nothing intense. She asked what my biggest fear was once, which I thought was kind of random, but I said heights and moved on. She didn't answer hers. We agreed to meet at this retro diner about 20 minutes from where I live. It's one of those places with red booths and a jukebox that barely works. The kind of place that smells like old grease and vanilla milkshakes. I liked it because it was public and bright. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting in a booth near the window. She waved when she saw me. She looked exactly like her pictures. Same haircut, same serious eyes. The date started normal. We ordered burgers. She barely touched hers. She kept asking low questions about my routine. What time I leave for work. Whether I have roommates. If I usually tell friends where I'm going on dates. It felt casual when she asked it, like she was just curious. I remember thinking she seemed distracted. She kept checking her phone under the table, the screen lighting up her face slightly. I figured maybe she was nervous. About 40 minutes in, while I was mid-sentence about something stupid my coworker did, her phone buzzed again. She looked down at it. Then she blinked a few times. Then she swiped on the screen, and I felt my own phone buzz in my pocket at the exact same time. I ignored it at first. I thought it was just a random notification. She looked up at me. Not smiling anymore, just staring. Then she looked back at her phone and did something deliberate. I could see her thumb moving slowly across the screen, like she was making a choice. My phone buzzed again. This time I pulled it out. It was the dating app. Notification. You have been unmatched. I frowned, confused. I was literally sitting across from her. I opened the app. Our chat was gone. Like it never existed. Her profile didn't show up in my messages anymore. I looked up at her. She was watching me now. Carefully. Then she turned her phone around and slid across the table toward me. On her screen was my profile. My name. My pictures. But the bio was different. Where it used to say something simple about liking late-night drives and bad horror movies, it now read, "Do not let leave." All in plain text. No emojis. No explanation. My stomach tightened. I told her that wasn't what my profile said. She just tilted her head slightly, like she was studying my reaction. I grabbed my phone again and refreshed my profile. My bio had changed there too. Do not let leave. I hadn't edited it. I hadn't even opened that section in weeks. I tried to change it back immediately. The app wouldn't let me. Every time I typed something else and hit save, it snapped back to the same phrase. Do not let leave. I started to feel heat rising in my face. I laughed it off, saying it was probably a glitch. But she didn't laugh. She leaned back in the booth, folded her arms, and kept staring at me like she was waiting for something. Around us, the diner was still normal. Waitress refilling coffee, a kid crying in the corner, forks clinking on plates. It made it worse somehow. I checked my messages on the app again. New notifications were popping up. Not from her. From other girls. But the messages weren't normal. They said things like, "I'm here and I can see you." Another said, "Don't try to leave this time." My hands felt cold. I looked up at Tessa again. She hadn't moved. Her eyes flicked down to my phone, then back to my face. I asked her if she did this. She didn't answer. Instead, she picked up her milkshake and took a slow sip, still watching me over the rim of the glass. My phone buzzed again. Another message. It had a photo attached. I opened it. It was a picture of the diner, from outside, taken through the front window. You could see our booth. You could see me sitting there. And Tessa across from me. The timestamp said 2 minutes ago. I looked toward the window immediately. Nothing but a parking lot and a few cars. But the angle of the photo was slightly higher than eye level, like it was taken from inside a taller vehicle. My heart was pounding now. I looked back at her. She slowly reached for her phone again and tapped something. My phone buzzed once more. Another notification from the app. Profile updated successfully. I opened it. Under my name, a new line had been added. He tries to leave. My chest felt tight. I stood up from the booth without really thinking about it. She didn't move to stop me. But as I stepped away, her phone buzzed. She glanced down at it and smiled faintly again. I looked at my phone. New message. Stay seated. I looked around the diner. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. 2 tables behind us, a guy was sitting alone, phone held upright, pointed slightly in our direction. Near the counter, another person had their phone angled similarly. Not obviously filming, just subtle enough. My breathing got heavier. I turned back to Tessa. She finally spoke, but I'm not going to repeat what she said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was calm, like she was explaining rules. I slowly sat back down. My phone buzzed again. Profile updated successfully. Now it read, do not let leave. He tries to leave. The messages from strangers kept coming. Some were just dots. Some were photos. One was a picture of my apartment building, taken from across the street. I felt like the walls of the diner were closing in even though it was wide open and loud. I asked her what she wanted. She didn't answer directly. She just said something about people needing to stay where they're meant to stay. Like I was a misplaced object. After a few more minutes that felt like hours, she picked up her phone and typed something. My phone buzzed one last time. Profile updated successfully. The bio went back to normal. My old words. The extra line disappeared. The messages stopped. Just like that. She stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked out without looking back. I stayed in that booth for a long time after she left. When I finally checked the app again, her profile was completely gone. Not unmatched. Gone. Like she never had one. I deleted the app that night. A week later, I read an article online about a group that runs social experiments through dating platforms, testing behavior, reactions. There were no names listed. No proof. Just rumors. I don't know if that's what it was. All I know is that sometimes, when I download the app again out of boredom, my bio is already filled in. Before I type anything. It says the same thing every time. Do not let leave.
Hey guys, really sorry to disturb you, but if you're enjoying the stories up until this point, please smash that like button. That's all I'm asking for you guys. Let's break some records this year. Now, back to the stories.
I did not even know the dating app had an emergency contact feature. That is the part that keeps replaying in my head. Not the restaurant, not her face, not even what happened after. Just that simple notification lighting up my screen like it was something normal, like it was a low battery warning or a food delivery update. Emergency contact notified. I remember staring at those 3 words while sitting across from a girl I had known for exactly 52 minutes. Her name was Brielle. We matched on an app I had downloaded again after deleting it for the 3rd time that year. I live alone in a small condo near the highway, and sometimes the silence gets loud. Dating apps feel like noise. Temporary distraction. Her profile was kind of minimal. A couple of pictures. One in a parking garage. One in front of a mural downtown. She had this straight-faced look in all of them, not smiling much. It made her look serious, maybe even intimidating. But when we started messaging, she was surprisingly relaxed. She asked about my job, which is boring office stuff. She asked what kind of music I listen to when driving at night. She asked if I believe people can sense danger before it happens. That question stuck out, but I brushed it off. We talked for about a week before meeting. Nothing intense. No oversharing. Just normal small talk and some jokes. She suggested dinner at this small rooftop restaurant above a boutique hotel downtown. It was a little more upscale than I usually go for, but I agreed. The night of the date, the city felt weirdly quiet. Not empty, just muted. The restaurant had string lights hanging overhead and those tall outdoor heaters glowing orange. The tables were close enough that you could hear other people laughing, but not their words. She was already there when I arrived. Sitting straight, hands folded on the table like she had been waiting for a while. She looked exactly like her pictures, same serious expression. Dinner started fine. We ordered pasta. She barely touched hers. She kept asking slightly personal questions. If I had siblings. If I talked to my parents often. Who would be the first person to worry if I stopped answering my phone? I laughed it off and said probably my sister. She calls me too much anyway. She nodded like that information mattered more than it should. About halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down automatically. Dating app notification. I frowned because I wasn't even on the app anymore. I had closed it before leaving my condo. The notification preview was short. Emergency contact notified. I actually thought I read it wrong at first. I unlocked my phone. The app was open somehow, even though I know I closed it. At the top of the screen, in small gray text, it said safety protocol activated. My chest tightened. I tapped the notification. It opened to a page I had never seen before. It showed my profile picture in the corner and underneath it, a line that said emergency contact, Megan's sister. That was my sister's name. I had never entered her as an emergency contact on this app. Underneath that, it said location shared. The map showed a small blue dot, right on the rooftop restaurant. My stomach dropped. I immediately looked up at Brielle. She was watching me. Not pretending to scroll her phone. Not looking around. Just watching my face carefully. I asked her if she knew anything about this. She slowly tilted her head and asked what was wrong. I showed her my phone screen. Her eyebrows raised slightly, but not in surprise. More like interest. I went into my account settings, trying to find where this emergency contact feature was. I had never set it up. I don't remember agreeing to anything like that. Before I could dig further, my phone buzzed again. Text message from my sister. She asked if I was okay. My heart started pounding. I told her I was fine and asked why. She replied almost instantly, saying she just got an automated message from some dating app saying I might be in danger and that my live location had been shared. I felt heat rush to my face. I told her it was probably a glitch. Another buzz. This time from my mom. She asked why she got a strange email about me being in a risky situation. I froze. I looked back at the app screen. Under Megan, it now listed 2 more names. Mom. Dad. I had never connected them to anything on this app. The map refreshed. A timer appeared. Safety check-in, 14:59. Light countdown. I started feeling lightheaded. Across the table, Brielle leaned back slightly and folded her hands in her lap. She asked if everything was okay in a tone that sounded almost rehearsed. I tried to log out of the app. It wouldn't let me. Every time I tapped log out, it gave me a message saying active safety session in progress. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my sister. She said she was tracking my location now and asking why I was on a rooftop bar at this time of night. Then another message. She said the alert also included a note. I asked what note. She sent a screenshot. It was a message that looked like it came from me. It said, I do not feel safe. If I do not respond in 15 minutes, call the police. I'd never typed that. I never even saw that message. My hands started shaking. I looked at Brielle again. She was still calm. She picked up her glass of water and took a small sip. Then she set it down carefully. I asked her directly if she had done something. She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. She just asked if I felt safe. The countdown on my phone hit 10:42. My sister called. Her name lit up the screen. I declined it. Immediately, the app screen changed. New alert, emergency contact escalation in progress. My breathing got heavier. I stood up from the table, half planning to leave. But the moment I stood, her phone buzzed. She glanced down at it. Then she looked up at me. I felt this sudden realization that maybe she was getting the same updates, like she was linked to whatever safety protocol had been triggered. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't family. It was the app. Nearby users alerted. My blood ran cold. I looked around the rooftop. There were maybe 15 other people scattered at tables. Some of them were now looking at their phones. One guy near the railing glanced in my direction briefly, then looked back at his screen. Another woman at a table across from us did the same. My heart was racing. The app screen showed a new message. Community safety activated. I felt like I was part of something I didn't understand. Brielle leaned forward slightly and asked me if I had anything to hide. I said no. She asked why the app would think I was unsafe then. I didn't have an answer. My phone buzzed again, this time for my sister. She said she was calling the police just in case. I tried to text her to stop. The message failed to send. No service. I checked the signal bars. Full. But the text wouldn't go through. The countdown hit 4:12. I felt trapped. Not physically, but digitally. Like my entire life had just been connected to this moment without my permission. Brielle finally stood up. She smoothed out her dress and looked down at me. She said something quietly that I'm not going to repeat. Then she picked up her bag. Before walking away, she tapped something on her phone. My screen refreshed. Safety check complete. Emergency contacts notified. Session closed. The countdown disappeared. My sister immediately texted asking what was going on because the alert just said resolved. I told her it was a mistake. 5 minutes later, 2 police officers walked onto the rooftop. They scanned the area casually. I stayed seated. Brielle was gone. I watched as the officers spoke briefly to the host and then left. I opened the app again. There was a new section in my profile I had never seen before. Trust score, under review. No explanation. No details. Just that. I deleted the app that night. The next morning, I got an email. It thanked me for participating in a real-time safety evaluation. It said my data may be used to improve future user protection systems. I never agreed to that. I checked the sender address. It was the official app domain. I blocked it. Sometimes I wonder if the whole dinner was staged, if she was part of some trial run, or if the app just decided to test something on a random Thursday night. I don't use dating apps anymore, and I turn off location sharing on everything. But every once in a while, my sister will randomly text asking if I'm safe. And I always wonder if somewhere in some database, there's still a timer counting down next to my name. I should have lied about my job. That's the sentence that keeps replaying in my head, not the drive home, not the look on her face. Just that moment where I casually told the truth because that's what you do on first dates. You tell the truth about your job. You make it sound slightly more interesting than it is. You expect a normal reaction. You do not expect someone to smile and say that'll make the paperwork easier. Her name was Callie. We matched on a dating app I had just read about in some article ranking the best ones for serious relationships. I had been off apps for a while because most dates felt like interviews that led nowhere, but I got bored one weekend and downloaded it again. Callie's profile looked simple. Clean pictures, no filters. One of her at a farmer's market holding flowers, one in front of a lake. Her bio was short. It said she liked organized spaces, long drives, and people who knew what they wanted. We talked for about 2 weeks before meeting, longer than usual for me. She asked thoughtful questions. She remembered small details I mentioned days earlier. It felt intentional, like she was building a file on me in her head. I live about 30 minutes outside the city in a townhouse complex that all looks the same. She suggested meeting at this new restaurant inside a converted courthouse downtown. I didn't even know it existed. Apparently, they kept some of the old architecture. High ceilings, old wooden benches near the entrance. It sounded cool. When I walked in, the place was dimly lit but not dark. More like warm and quiet. The old judge's bench was still at the front of the room, now just decoration behind the bar. She was sitting at a table near one of the tall windows. She looked even more put together than her photos. Straight posture, calm expression, like she belonged in a building that used to be a courthouse. The first half of the date was normal. We talked about music, travel, dumb childhood stories. She had this way of listening that felt intense, like she was not just hearing words but analyzing them. Then she asked what I did for work. I didn't hesitate. I told her I worked in compliance for a mid-sized financial firm, mostly reviewing documents, making sure things lined up legally, boring stuff, paper trails, deadlines. She smiled. Not wide, just a slow, satisfied curve of her lips. Then she said, "Good, that'll make the paperwork easier." At first, I thought she was joking, like some weird comment about me being organized. I laughed lightly. She didn't. She took a sip of her water and kept looking at me. I asked what she meant. She said something about how it's important to understand forms and signatures and procedures, that most people don't pay attention to the fine print. Her tone wasn't playful. It wasn't flirty either. It sounded practical. I brushed it off, but something in my chest tightened a little. The waiter came and refilled our glasses. The normal restaurant sounds filled the silence for a second. She changed the topic to family. She asked if I had siblings. I said one older brother. She asked if we were close. I said not really, we talk on holidays. She nodded like she was checking something off mentally. Then she asked if I had a will. I laughed again, assuming it was dark humor. She didn't laugh. She just stared at me for a few seconds before saying it's smart to have one even if you're young. I felt this subtle shift in the air, like the date had moved into a category I didn't sign up for. I asked what she did for work. She said she worked in administrative processing for a private firm. A vague answer. When I asked what kind of firm, she said legal adjacent. Legal adjacent. That phrase stuck with me. Halfway through dinner, she pulled out her phone and showed me something. It looked like a digital form. Blank fields, lines for names, dates, signatures. She said she hated messy handwriting and preferred digital documentation. I joked that she sounded intense. She smiled again, same small smile. She asked if I trusted her. That question felt heavy for a first date. I said trust takes time. She nodded slowly. Then she asked if I had ever signed anything without fully read it. I said probably. Most people have. She leaned back in her chair and looked almost pleased. The conversation kept looping back to documentation, records, how easy it is to transfer ownership of things if you know the right channels. I started feeling uneasy. I excused myself to the restroom just to clear my head. The hallway leading there still had old courtroom photos hanging on the walls, black and white images of judges and defendants from decades ago. When I came back to the table, she was typing on her phone. She locked it as soon as I sat down. I tried to steer the conversation back to something normal. Movies, food, travel plans. She answered, but her attention felt split. Then my phone buzzed. Email notification. Subject line, document pending signature. I frowned. It was from a DocuSign style service. I opened it. The document title was Asset Transfer Acknowledgement. My name was filled in. My full legal name. My address. Even my townhouse unit number. My pulse spiked. I looked up at her. She was watching my face carefully. I scrolled through the document. It listed items I owned, my car, my condo, even my bank institution name, though not the account number. The beneficiary field was blank. The signature line had my name typed already, just missing a digital signature. I asked her what this was. She tilted her head slightly and said she was curious how fast someone in compliance would notice inconsistencies. I felt cold. I asked how she got my address. She shrugged lightly and said public records are easier to access than people think. My phone buzzed again. Another email. This one was a life insurance policy draft. Again with my full name. Again pending signature. I never applied for life insurance. I stood up from the table. She stayed seated. Calm. She told me to relax. She said none of it was finalized without consent. She emphasized the word consent like it was part of a script. I told her to delete whatever she started. She said she didn't start it. She said it was already in motion. That phrase made my chest feel tight. Already in motion. I left the restaurant without finishing dinner. I walked straight to my car and locked the doors. My phone kept buzzing. Emails, notifications, verification requests. One message said confirm identity to proceed. Another said failure to respond may result in default processing. I felt like my entire identity was being processed without me. I called the document service customer support number from the email. They said the document originated from a verified corporate account. They couldn't cancel it without authorization from the sender. I asked who the sender was. They said the account name was redacted due to privacy. That night, I froze my credit. I changed every password I could think of. The next morning, I got a notification from the dating app. Caveat unmatched. Her profile was gone, like she never existed. A week later, I received a physical letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. At the top, my full name. Under it, a checklist. Employment verified. Property verified. Family contact minimal. Risk assessment pending. At the bottom, handwritten in neat ink. Paperwork almost complete. I moved out of that townhouse 2 months later. New city, new job, different bank. I don't use dating apps anymore. But sometimes when I check my spam folder, I see random document requests with my name already filled in. Waiting. The first red flag was the word neutral. He kept using it like it meant safe, like it was some magic word that canceled out every possible bad outcome. When I think about that night now, that's the part that sticks with me. Not the building, not the locked doors. Just how calm he sounded when he said we should meet somewhere neutral. His name was Adrian. We matched on a dating app I had only downloaded because my roommate wouldn't stop talking about her own dates. I lived with her in a second-floor apartment above a nail salon, and she swore I needed to get out more. Adrian's profile looked normal. Gym selfie, one picture hiking, one at what looked like a birthday party. His bio said he worked in logistics and liked quiet places over loud bars. I liked that part. I hate crowded clubs. He seemed low-key. We talked for about a week. He wasn't pushy. He asked about my job, which is just retail at a clothing store. He asked what part of town I live in, but not in a creepy way. More like figuring out distance. When it came time to meet, I suggested a coffee shop near my apartment. Public, busy, easy to leave if things felt weird. He said he preferred somewhere neutral. I asked what that meant. He said somewhere neither of us had history with. No friends popping in. No staff who recognized us. Just neutral ground. It sounded reasonable when he explained it. Almost mature, like he thought ahead. I agreed. He said he knew a place. Quiet. Easy parking. The night of the date, he picked me up because he insisted it would be easier. I told my roommate his name, sent her his profile, and shared my location just in case. I wasn't stupid. The drive started normal. We made small talk. Music played softly in the background. He seemed relaxed. No weird vibes at first. But after about 15 minutes, I noticed we were leaving the busier part of town. The streetlights got more spaced out. Fewer cars. I asked how far the place was. He said not far. 5 more minutes passed. Then he turned into an industrial area I had never been to before. Big empty lots. Warehouses with faded paint. Most of them closed for the night. My stomach tightened. He pulled into a parking lot in front of a large gray building. No sign. No logo. Just a blank metal door and dark windows. I asked if this was it. He nodded. He said it used to be something else but got converted. Converted into what? I asked. He didn't answer directly. He just said it was neutral. There were no other cars in the lot. Not a single one. I told him it didn't look open. He smiled slightly and said it was private. That word made my chest feel tight. Private. He got out of the car and walked to the metal door. I hesitated for a second, but didn't want to look paranoid. I stepped out too. The air smelled like asphalt and dust. No restaurant noise. No music, just silence. He pulled out a key card from his wallet. Key card. That's when my heart started beating harder. He swiped it on a small black panel next to the door. I hadn't even noticed the panel before. The door unlocked with a dull click. He held it open and gestured for me to go in first. Inside, it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a restaurant. It wasn't even a cafe. It was a large open room with concrete floors and bright overhead lights. Folding tables set up in rows. Metal chairs. No decorations. It looked like a testing center. Or a training facility. There were no windows. Just more doors along the side walls. The door closed behind us automatically. I heard it lock. I turned around immediately and tried the handle. Locked. I looked at him. He was calm. He said it was just for privacy. I asked what this place was. He said it was a neutral evaluation space. That phrase didn't make sense. Evaluation of what? He walked toward one of the folding tables and pulled out a chair for me. I didn't sit. My phone buzzed in my hand. No service. 0 bars. I had full signal in the parking lot. I felt my throat go dry. I asked him to unlock the door. He said we hadn't even started yet. Started what? He walked to a small cabinet against the wall and pulled out a thin folder. My name was printed on it. My full name. I felt dizzy. He opened it and flipped through papers like he was reviewing something. He said he liked to keep things organized. He started listing details about me. My job at the clothing store. My shift schedule. The fact that I lived above a nail salon. The name of my roommate. I felt my legs go weak. I asked how he knew that. He said social media makes things easy. I don't even post that much. He said most people don't realize how much they reveal in comments and tagged photos. He motioned toward the chair again. He said his wouldn't take long. I backed away instead. I walked along the wall looking for another exit. Every door had a keypad. No handles. He told me not to panic. He said neutral means no advantage. That neither of us had control here. I looked around at the blank walls and locked doors and wanted to scream. He had a key card. He brought me here. That didn't feel neutral. My phone buzzed again. A notification from the dating app. Safety check-in. It asked if I felt comfortable. I tried to tap no. The screen froze. He noticed and smiled slightly. He said the building blocks signals but has internal Wi-Fi. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screen with multiple user profiles. Mine was at the top. Under it, a list of data points. Trust level. Response time. Stress indicators. I felt like I was being studied. He said some people look for partners. Others look for patterns. He said he worked in behavioral analytics. That logistics job was apparently just easier to explain. I told him I wanted to leave. He said that would affect the results. Results of what? He walked closer, not aggressively, just calm. He said the neutral site allows unbiased observation. That distractions outside can skew behavior. My chest felt tight. I tried the main door again. Still locked. I thought about screaming, but there was no one around to hear it. He placed the folder on the table. Inside were screenshots of my profile, my posts, even comments I left years ago. He asked if I thought I was predictable. I told him this was insane. He said people always say that when they are observed. I felt tears forming, but I refused to cry. I stepped back until I hit the wall. Then suddenly, the lights flickered. Just once. He glanced up at the ceiling. Then at his phone. His expression changed slightly. Like something unexpected happened. The door behind me made a soft clicking sound. Unlocked. I didn't hesitate. I lunged for it and yanked it open. Cold night air hit my face. I ran. I didn't look back. I sprinted across the parking lot and down the street until I saw headlights from a passing car. I flagged it down like a crazy person. The driver let me use their phone. When I called the police and explained where I was, they said that building had been vacant for months. No registered businesses. No utilities active. When officers arrived, the door was unlocked. The inside was empty. No tables. No chairs. No cabinet. Just bare concrete and dust. No sign anyone had been there recently. My location history on my phone showed a blank gap for 40 minutes. Like I was nowhere. I deleted every dating app that night. I still live in the same apartment, but I double-check every building I walk into now. If someone ever suggests somewhere neutral again, I'm walking the other way. The first time she showed me the screenshots, I thought it was a joke. Not a funny one, but like one of those weird personality test things people send where you're supposed to guess what happens next. I did not think it would end with me scrolling through messages that technically did not exist yet, reading my own words before I had ever typed them. Her name was Lyanna. We matched on a dating app that I had just reinstalled after a long break. I live in a small studio near the river, and when the weather gets colder, I get restless. Swiping gives you the illusion that something is happening. Lyanna's profile was clean and minimal. No group photos, just her. One picture at a bus stop at night. One sitting on the hood of a car. Her bio said she liked patterns and disliked surprises. I remember thinking that was oddly specific. We messaged for about 10 days before meeting. She was thoughtful, almost too thoughtful. She would reference small details I mentioned casually, like the brand of cereal I eat or the fact that I set 3 alarms every morning. It felt flattering at first, like she was actually paying attention. We agreed to meet at a quiet wine bar tucked between 2 bookstores downtown. It was a narrow place with brick walls and dim yellow lights. Not crowded, but not empty either. Enough people that it felt safe. She was already seated when I walked in. Dark sweater, hair tied back, eyes sharp. She stood up to hug me briefly, and then sat down again like she was resetting into position. The first half of the date was easy. We talked about work. I told her I worked in its support for a hospital network. Nothing dramatic. Just resetting passwords and fixing printers most days. She asked if I liked solving problems. I said, yeah, I guess. She nodded like that was important. About an hour in, after we finished our second drinks, she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She said she wanted to show me something interesting. I leaned forward slightly. She opened her gallery and turned the screen toward me. It was a screenshot of a text conversation between her and me, except the timestamps were dated 3 days in the future. My stomach tightened. I told her that wasn't possible. She zoomed in. The messages had my name at the top, my profile picture, even the little heart emoji I sometimes use ironically. The conversation started normal. Then it escalated. In the screenshot, she had apparently accused me of ignoring her messages, and I had responded defensively. The words under my name were harsh, accusatory, exactly the kind of thing I would say if I felt cornered. I stared at the screen, feeling heat creep up my neck. I told her I never sent those. She said not yet. That phrase felt like a cold hand pressing on my chest. She swiped to the next screenshot. More messages. This time I was apologizing. Then getting frustrated again. The argument spiraled. The last message under my name in the screenshot said something final. Something that sounded like a breakup. Dated next week. I felt disoriented. I checked my own phone. Our real conversation was still friendly. No tension. No argument. I asked her what this was supposed to be. She said she runs predictive models. I laughed nervously, thinking she was exaggerating. She said she feeds behavioral data into a system. Texting patterns, response times, word choices, emotional shifts. She said most arguments are not random. They are patterns reaching a point. I stared at her, trying to decide if she was messing with me. She zoomed in again on one of the screenshots. She pointed to a specific message under my name. She asked if I wanted to change that response. The way she said it made my chest feel tight. Like I was being offered a choice I didn't understand. I told her this was weird. She didn't deny it. She said she prefers to get ahead of things. I looked closer at the screenshot. The grammar was exactly how I type. Short sentences, no punctuation at the end sometimes. Even the typo I tend to make when typing fast was there. I scrolled through more images on her phone. There were dozens. Different versions of the same argument. In one version, I got angrier. In another, I blocked her. In another, she blocked me. Each screenshot had slight variations. She said the outcome depends on small decisions. She asked again if I wanted to adjust my response now to avoid the future conflict. I felt like I was part of some experiment. I told her she could not possibly know what I was going to say next week. She asked if I was sure. Then she asked what I would say if she accused me of pulling away. I said I wouldn't pull away. She smiled faintly and said that is exactly what the model predicts. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down. It was a message from her. Sent just seconds ago. I looked up at her. She was still holding her phone. The message on my screen said, "Are you starting to feel overwhelmed?" That exact phrasing appeared in one of the future screenshots. I felt my pulse in my ears. I typed back no. She immediately showed me another screenshot. In that version, when I typed no, the argument escalated faster. She said see. My breathing felt shallow. I asked her how she was doing this. She said it is not about doing. It is about observing. She said people are predictable if you collect enough data. She started listing things about me. How long I usually take to reply to messages. How my tone shifts after 10 p.m. How I use humor when I feel defensive. I felt exposed. Like she had been tracking me for longer than just our conversation. She scrolled further in her gallery. There were screenshots dated months ahead. In some we were still together. In others we had stopped talking. In one I was begging her to stay. That one made my stomach drop. I told her that would never happen. She asked if I was sure. She showed me a version where she slowly withdrew over time. My responses in that version grew longer and more emotional. It looked disturbingly realistic. I tried to grab her phone to inspect it closer. She pulled it back quickly. She said the model updates in real time. I laughed nervously and asked what model. She said she built it, using scraped data. From dating apps. From social media. From text conversations. She said most people volunteer their own patterns without realizing. I suddenly remembered the little personality quizzes the app had asked me to fill out. The voice prompts. The late-night surveys about how I handle conflict. I felt stupid. My phone buzzed again. Another message from her. It said this is where you accuse me of being manipulative. I had not typed anything yet. I stared at the screen. Then at her. She watched my face carefully. I felt trapped in a script. If I said nothing, was that part of it too? She leaned forward slightly. She asked if I wanted to see the version where it ends well. I didn't answer. She showed me one more screenshot. In that version, I apologized early in the argument. Took responsibility for something I hadn't done yet. The argument de-escalated. We stayed together longer. She looked almost hopeful in that version. She asked if I wanted to try that path instead. The way she said it made it feel real. Like she genuinely believed the screenshots were a map. I stood up from the table. She didn't try to stop me. She just said something about most people refusing to look at their own patterns. I left the wine bar feeling dizzy. That night, I checked our conversation again. Still normal. Still calm. 3 days later, she texted asking why I seemed distant. I stared at the message for a long time. My heart pounded. I remembered the screenshot. I remembered the exact words I had supposedly sent in response. For a split second, I almost typed them. Then I stopped. I deleted the app that same night. I blocked her number. A week later, I got an email from an unknown address. It contained a single image attachment. A screenshot. Dated that day. It showed me replying to her. Word for word the message I almost sent. Underneath it, one line. You were close. I closed my laptop and haven't reopened that email since. The scariest part wasn't his face. It wasn't the way he leaned forward or how close he was to me when he said it. It was the sound my phone made at the exact same second. That soft little pop notification sound. The one you barely notice most of the time. Except this time it felt like something being erased. He unmatched me while sitting across from me and then leaned in slightly and whispered that now there's no record. I felt my brain freeze for a second. Like everything around me kept moving, but my thoughts just stalled out. His name was Ethan. We matched on a dating app I had been using casually for a few months. I live in a condo downtown by myself, and most nights I just scroll until I get bored. Ethan seemed normal. Clean cut, slightly nerdy. One photo in scrubs at a hospital. One at a baseball game. His bio said he worked in medical imaging and liked quiet coffee shops. We talked for about 8 days before meeting. He was consistent. Not overly flirty. Not weird. He asked about my job at a marketing firm, asked what shows I liked, what my friends were like. He seemed grounded. That was the word I used to describe him to my friend when I sent her his profile. We agreed to meet at a small sushi place near the waterfront. It was busy but not packed. Soft music playing. Big windows facing the water. Boats passing slowly in the distance. He was already seated when I arrived. He stood up to greet me, smiled politely, and pulled out my chair. Nothing about him felt off at first. If anything, he felt slightly reserved. Dinner started normal. We talked about work. He described hospital shifts and how quiet the imaging rooms are at night. I told him about deadlines and clients who change their minds constantly. It felt like a regular first date. About 40 minutes in, he asked if I believed digital footprints ever really disappear. It was a random shift in topic. I laughed lightly and said not really, everything online sticks around somewhere. He nodded slowly like he agreed. He said that's why you have to be careful about what record you create. I thought he meant embarrassing posts or old tweets. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He unlocked it casually and glanced at the screen. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it at first. He kept looking at me. Not smiling, just watching. I felt uneasy for no clear reason. Then he leaned slightly across the table, close enough that I could smell his cologne. And in a low voice, almost like he didn't want anyone else to hear, he said, "Now there's no record." I blinked. My brain tried to catch up. I pulled my phone out of my purse. Dating app notification. You have been unmatched. My stomach dropped. I opened the app. Our entire conversation was gone. The thread where we planned this dinner. Gone. His profile no longer showed up in my matches. It was like he had never existed on the app. I looked up at him. He was still sitting there calmly, chopsticks resting on his plate. I asked why he did that. He didn't answer directly. He just said sometimes it's better to remove unnecessary documentation. My heart started beating harder. I told him that was weird. He shrugged slightly and said it doesn't change the fact that we're here. But it changed something. It changed the feeling. Before, there was proof that we had interacted. Messages. A plan. A digital trail. Now there was nothing. If I walked out and something happened, there would be no record on the app tying me to him. I realized that in a split second. I tried searching for his profile again. Nothing. It was like he deleted his entire account, not just unmatched. I looked at him more carefully then. He looked the same. Normal. Relaxed. He took a sip of water and asked if I was uncomfortable. I said a little. He nodded like that was expected. He said most people don't think about how fragile digital history is. I felt my chest tighten. I asked if he deleted his whole account. He said maybe. He said sometimes people test how easy it is to disappear. The word disappear hit differently. I glanced around the restaurant. It was still busy. Servers moving. People laughing at nearby tables. Normal. But I suddenly felt isolated. Like I was in a bubble with him. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something else. A small folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table between us. My full name was written on it. Not just my first name. My full legal name. I felt cold all over. He said that even if the app erases things, other records exist. Public ones. Voter registration. Property listings. Professional licenses. He listed them casually like he was talking about weather. I asked how he knew my last name. He said it wasn't hard to find. He mentioned a marketing award I had won 2 years ago. That award used my full name in the press release. I felt exposed. He leaned back in his chair and studied my reaction. He said people rely too much on apps to create safety. Like the existence of a chat thread means protection. I wanted to leave right then. But something kept me frozen in my seat. Maybe pride. Maybe disbelief. My phone buzzed again. A text from my friend asking how the date was going. I typed back that it was fine. My hands were shaking slightly. He noticed. He said you can tell your friend I'm harmless. The way he said harmless made my stomach twist. I asked why he cared about records so much. He said because when something goes wrong, people always look for documentation. Proof. Timelines. He said if there's no record, there's only memory. And memory is unreliable. My heart was pounding so loud I felt like other tables could hear it. I told him I didn't like this conversation. He tilted his head slightly and said that was interesting. He asked what part made me uncomfortable. The lack of record or the reminder that it can vanish. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for my purse and stood up. He didn't try to grab me. He didn't block my way. He just watched. As I stepped away from the table, he said something quietly that I won't repeat. It wasn't loud. It wasn't threatening. It was calm. That made it worse. I walked straight out of the restaurant and into the night air. I didn't look back. When I got into my car, I tried to screenshot our old chat just in case. But it was gone. I tried searching his name online. Nothing obvious came up. The photo he used on the app did not appear in reverse image search. Like it never existed anywhere else. The next morning, I contacted the dating app support asking if they keep records of deleted accounts. They responded with a generic message about privacy and data retention policies. No specifics. No reassurance. 2 days later, I received an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a printed screenshot. It was our chat conversation from the app. The entire thing. Every message. Time-stamped. At the bottom, one line typed neatly. Records exist where you least expect them. I don't know how I got my mailing address that fast. I moved out of that condo 3 months later. I still use dating apps sometimes. But before every date, I screenshot everything. Profiles. Messages. Even the confirmation of the match. And if anyone ever brings up digital footprints again, I'm leaving before the check comes. The first weird thing she ever said to me wasn't romantic or flirty or even rude. It was practical. Calm. Almost helpful. She told me to turn off my location sharing before our date. Not because she cared about privacy in a normal way. Not because she thought it was dangerous. She said it like she was testing something. Her name was Mira. We matched on a dating app I had downloaded again after swearing I was done with them. I live in a high-rise apartment downtown, and when you live alone long enough, you start convincing yourself that random connections are better than none. Mira's profile was simple but sharp. Black and white photos. One close-up portrait. One standing in what looked like an empty parking garage. Her bio said she worked in cybersecurity and liked people who were careful. That last word stuck with me. Careful. We talked for about a week. She asked smarter questions than most people. Not just what you do for fun. More like how many apps have access to your camera. Do you use two-factor authentication? Have you ever checked what data your phone stores? At first, I thought she was just passionate about her job. I work in real estate. Nothing dramatic. I show condos. I negotiate contracts. I post listings online. When we agreed to meet, she suggested a late coffee spot near the train station. Open until midnight. Public. Bright lights. The night of the date, I drove there around 8 p.m. Before I left my apartment, I shared my location with my sister. I always do that for first dates, just a habit. About 10 minutes into the drive, Mira texted me. She asked if I was sharing my location with anyone. I thought that was random, but I said yes with my sister. She replied almost instantly and said you should turn that off. I asked why. She said too many people forget how visible they are. I told her I was fine. She sent another message. Turn it off before you get here. The tone felt firm. Non-suggestion. I hesitated but figured maybe she was paranoid because of her job. So, at a red light, I opened my location sharing settings and turned it off for my sister. I even took a screenshot and sent it to Mira, joking that I passed the security test. She replied with a simple thank you. When I arrived at the coffee shop, she was already there, sitting at a small corner table near the window. She looked exactly like her photos. Sharp features, calm expression. She stood up briefly to greet me, then sat back down. The place was quiet, but not empty. A couple studying near the back. Two guys talking softly near the counter. We ordered drinks and started talking. She asked about my job, about how often I post listings publicly, about whether I geotag photos when I upload them. It felt less like a date and more like a subtle audit. About 30 minutes in, she leaned forward slightly and asked if I had actually turned off my location sharing. I told her yes. She nodded. Then she looked at her phone and said, I can still see where you are. My chest tightened. I laughed nervously and said, that's impossible. She turned her phone toward me. On her screen was a map. A small blue dot. Right on top of the coffee shop. She zoomed in. The dot pulsed slightly. Under it, my first name. I felt my throat go dry. I pulled out my phone immediately and checked my settings. Location sharing was off. No apps were actively sharing my location with contacts. I showed her my screen. She nodded calmly. She said, I know. I asked how she was seeing it. She said location data doesn't just disappear when you toggle a switch. She said most people misunderstand how tracking works. My heart was pounding. I asked if she hacked me. She said that word is dramatic. She said she simply observes open signals. She mentioned Wi-Fi pings, Bluetooth handshakes, background app permissions most people ignore. I felt exposed in a way I can't fully explain. I asked her to refresh the map. She did. The dot moved slightly as I shifted in my chair. It was Liv. She told me to turn off my phone completely. I powered it down. The screen went black. She watched me do it. Then she looked at her phone again. The blue dot was still there. Still on the coffee shop. I felt my stomach twist. I told her that made no sense. She said phones aren't the only devices that broadcast. I looked around instinctively. At the tables. At the ceiling. Like something else in the room might be tagged to me. She asked if I wore a smartwatch. I do. I looked at my wrist. It was connected to my phone normally, but my phone was off. She told me to take it off. I did. She refreshed the map again. The blue dot flickered slightly, but didn't disappear. She said, see. My hands felt cold. I asked what exactly she was using to see this. She said it was just a tool she built to visualize passive signals. She said everyone emits more than they realize. I told her this wasn't funny. She said she wasn't joking. I tried to keep my voice steady and asked her to stop tracking me. She tilted her head slightly and said, I'm not tracking you. I'm showing you that you're already visible. My mind was racing. I asked if she could see where I live. She didn't answer immediately. She zoomed the map out slowly. The blue dot stayed at the coffee shop. Then she tapped something. A history trail appeared. Small faded dots. Leading from my apartment building. Down the main road. To the coffee shop. I felt dizzy. I had turned off location sharing before leaving my building. At least I thought I did. She said you turned it off too late. The words hit hard. She scrolled further back. There were older faded dots near my apartment complex from previous days. I don't remember sharing anything publicly tied to my address. She asked if I ever posted photos from my balcony. I have. She asked if I use the same Wi-Fi network for everything. I do. She said patterns connect faster than people think. My breathing felt shallow. I asked her why she was showing me this. She said because I needed to see how easy it is. She said most people think turning something off means it's gone. It's not. I felt anger rising now under the fear. I asked if she was doing this to scare me. She looked almost confused by that. She said she was trying to protect me. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. She said if I wanted to, I could walk you home without asking for your address. I stared at her. She said it calmly. Not threatening. Just factual. I stood up from the table. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. People glanced over briefly. I told her this was too much. She didn't try to stop me. She just watched. As I walked toward the door, my phone buzzed in my pocket, even though I had powered it off. I froze. Slowly, I pulled it out. The screen was black, but I felt the vibration again. Then again. Phantom buzzes. Or maybe not. I stepped outside into the cool night air and turned my phone back on. As soon as it powered up, I got a notification from the dating app. New message from Mira. It said you're standing outside now. I looked up immediately. She was still inside, visible through the glass window. Sitting calmly. Looking at her phone. I checked my location settings again. Everything was off. I blocked her number. Deleted the app. Went straight home. That night, I reset my phone completely. Changed Wi-Fi passwords. Disconnected every smart device in my apartment. For a few days, nothing happened. Then one evening, as I was sitting on my couch, my laptop screen lit up by itself. A small map window popped open. Blue dot. Right on my building. Under it, one word. Visible. I unplugged the laptop immediately. I don't use smart devices anymore. No smartwatch. No smart speaker. Nothing connected unless it has to be. And every time my phone vibrates unexpectedly, even once, I check every setting again. Because even if you turn it off, that doesn't mean someone else can't still see you. I didn't notice it right away. That's what makes it worse. It wasn't some dramatic moment where the lights flickered or my phone exploded with notifications. It was subtle, quiet, just a single word changing while I was laughing across the table from him. His dating profile updated lived during our date to say acquired. I wish I could say I immediately stood up and left. I didn't. I stared at it for a few seconds, trying to convince myself I was misreading it. His name was Nolan. We matched on an app I use way too often when I'm bored. I live in a small duplex on the edge of town, and my job at a car rental place gets repetitive. Swiping gives me something to look forward to, even if most of the dates go nowhere. Nolan's profile had this clean, polished vibe. Professional headshot. One picture in a gym mirror. One at a rooftop bar. His bio said he worked in corporate acquisitions and liked decisive people. That word acquisition stood out, but I figured it just meant business stuff. We talked for maybe 6 days before meeting. He was confident, but not aggressive. Quick responses. Direct plans. No endless small talk. He suggested dinner at this new steakhouse downtown that used to be an old bank. Vault doors still inside, fancy lighting, that kind of place. I got there a few minutes early and waited near the hostess stand. When he walked in, he looked exactly like his pictures. Well-dressed. Calm. Slight smile. Dinner started normal. We ordered drinks. He asked about my job. I told him I manage rentals, handle paperwork, deal with customers who return cars late. He listened closely, like even the boring details mattered. He talked about his work too. Corporate acquisitions. Mergers. He said he specializes in identifying undervalued assets. The way he said assets felt deliberate. I laughed and said that sounds intense. He said everything is about value. It didn't feel weird at the time, just business talk. About 40 minutes in, while he was telling me a story about a deal he closed, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down automatically. Dating app notification. Normally I wouldn't check it mid-date, but I saw his name in the preview. Curious, I tapped it. It opened his profile. The bio had changed. Where it used to say corporate acquisitions and decisive people, it now just said acquired. One word. No punctuation. I frowned. I looked up at him. He was still talking like nothing happened. I refreshed the profile. Still there. Acquired. I asked him if he just updated his profile. He stopped mid-sentence and looked at me calmly. He asked what it said. I turned my phone toward him. He leaned in slightly to read it. Then he smiled. Not surprised, not confused, just satisfied. He said I keep things current. My stomach tightened. I asked what acquired meant. He shrugged lightly and said it means the deal is complete. The way he said deal made my skin feel cold. I told him that was a weird thing to update during a date. He said timing matters. He picked up his drink and took a slow sip, still watching me over the rim of the glass. I tried to laugh it off. I told myself maybe he was just joking about getting off the app because he liked me. But he didn't say that. He didn't say anything about deleting it or focusing on me. He just kept smiling slightly. I went back to his profile page and noticed something else. The number of matches displayed at the top had dropped to 0. Not hidden. 0. Like he wiped everything. I asked if he deleted all his matches. He said not deleted. Consolidated. My chest felt tight. I scrolled down. Under his photos, there was a new section that hadn't been there before. Status. It said acquired. I felt like I was reading a listing, not a person. I locked my phone and set it down slowly. I asked what he meant by consolidated. He said in business, once an asset is secured, you remove competing interests. I told him I'm not an asset. He looked genuinely confused for a second, like that thought hadn't occurred to him. He said everyone is something of value. He asked if I didn't want to be chosen. The word chosen sounded wrong in that moment. My phone buzzed again. Another notification from the app. Profile interaction updated. I opened it again despite myself. Under my own profile, there was a small banner at the top that hadn't been there before. Connected to Nolan. I never accepted anything like that. I checked my settings. There was no option to disconnect. I felt my breathing get heavier. He watched me carefully. He asked if I was uncomfortable. I said a little. He nodded like that was a predictable response. He said people resist change at first. I told him this felt less like change and more like ownership. He didn't deny it. Instead, he asked if I had read the terms of service on the app. I hadn't. He said most people don't realize how much access they grant when they click agree. I felt exposed in a way I can't fully explain. Like I signed something invisible. He leaned forward slightly and lowered his voice. He said when two profiles interact long enough, the system categorizes them, prioritizes them, pairs them. I told him that's not how it works. He asked if I was sure. My phone buzzed again. New notification. Engagement metrics updated. I opened it with shaking hands. There was a percentage bar under his name. Compatibility locked, 100%. I never filled out enough questions to hit 100% with anyone. Ever. I refreshed it. Still 100%. I tried logging out of the app. It wouldn't let me. Error message. Active pairing session in progress. My chest felt tight. I told him I wanted to leave. He didn't try to stop me physically. He just said if you leave now, it marks the acquisition incomplete. That phrase made my heart pound in my ears. Incomplete. I stood up anyway. As I grabbed my purse, my phone buzzed again. Notification. Acquisition status pending. I walked toward the exit without looking back. The restaurant felt suddenly too quiet. Like everyone could see something I couldn't. When I stepped outside into the night air, I checked the app again. His profile now showed offline. But under my own profile, the banner still said connected to Nolan. I tried deleting the app entirely. The icon disappeared. But when I searched his name online later that night, I found something that made my stomach drop. A business press release from 3 years ago. Nolan listed as Director of Strategic Acquisitions for a tech company that specialized in behavioral data. The article described how the company acquires smaller platforms and integrates user data seamlessly. Acquires. Integrates. Consolidates. The same word to use at dinner. The next morning, I re-downloaded the dating app to check if the banner was still there. My account wouldn't load. Ever. User merged. I have no idea what that means. I created a new account with a different email just to see. His profile was gone. Not unmatched. Gone. But when I searched through settings, under account connections, there was a single entry. Archived acquisition. No details. Just that. I deleted the app again and haven't touched it since. Sometimes I still wonder if somewhere in some database my profile is listed under his. Status finalized. Acquired. I almost didn't check my phone. That's the part that gets me. If I had just left it face down on the table like a normal person, maybe I would have finished dinner, said goodbye, and gone home thinking he was just another decent guy with a slightly intense vibe. Instead, I glanced at one notification at the worst possible time and watched a single word rewrite the entire night. His profile updated lived during our date to say acquired. Not in a cute way, not like taken or seeing someone, just that one word. Cold. Final. His name was Marcus. Different Marcus than any other guy I've met, but still the name feels ruined now. We matched on an app I downloaded after moving into a new apartment. I live alone now in a small place near the edge of the city, 3rd floor, thin walls, view of a parking lot, and a half-dead tree. I figured meeting someone might make the place feel less empty. Marcus' profile was sharp but simple. Black shirt, clean haircut, one photo of him at what looked like a conference with a lanyard around his neck. His bio said he worked in asset management and preferred quality over quantity. I remember thinking that sounded confident, maybe a little cocky, but not alarming. We talked for about a week and a half. He was steady, not overwhelming. He asked about my job at dental office, asked about my routine, what time I usually got off work, if I had pets. Normal questions that felt like normal curiosity. He suggested dinner at this new fusion place downtown built inside an old train depot. High ceilings, exposed brick, metal beams still visible from the original structure. It sounded cool, and it was public, so I agreed. When I walked in, he was already seated at a long wooden table near the back. He stood up, smiled, pulled out my chair. Nothing weird in his body language. Calm. Grounded. The first hour felt easy. We talked about food, travel, the worst dates we both had. He laughed at the right moments. He listened when I talked. If someone had filmed that part of the night, it would have looked completely normal. Then he started talking about his job in more detail. He said he specialized in acquisitions. Not just companies, sometimes contracts, sometimes portfolios. He said the key to a good acquisition is timing and exclusivity. I joked that he made dating sound like business. He didn't laugh. He just said there are similarities. I brushed it off. About halfway through our second drink, my phone lit up on the table. I usually keep it face down, but for some reason I had placed it screen up. The notification banner slid across the top. Dating app update. Normally, I wouldn't open it on a date, but I saw his profile picture in the preview. Curious, I tapped it. The app opened directly to his profile. And right under his name, or his bio used to be, it now said acquired. I blinked. I refreshed the page. Still there. Acquired. My stomach tightened in a slow, heavy way. I looked up at him. He was watching me. Not nervously, not confused. Watching. I asked him if he just updated his profile. He leaned slightly forward, resting his forearms on the table. He said yes. I asked why it said that. He tilted his head slightly and asked what I thought it meant. The way he said it made my chest feel tight. I told him it sounded possessive. He said words only feel possessive if you think you can be owned. That made no sense, but it also made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't explain yet. I looked back down at the screen. His profile picture was still there. Same photos, same smile. Just that single word. I checked the timestamp on the update. 2 minutes ago. Right when we were both sitting there. I asked if he was deleting the app. He said no. He said deleting implies loss. This was consolidation. That word again. Business language wrapped around something personal. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. I clicked into my own profile just to see if anything had changed. At the top, there was a small tag I had never seen before. Primary match. Underneath it, his name. I never selected anything like that. I asked him if he did something to the app. He smiled slightly and said not directly. I felt exposed. Like the app was no longer a neutral space, but something he understood better than I did. He said the algorithm responds to signals. Time spent messaging. Length of responses. Consistency. He said when certain thresholds are met, the system prioritizes exclusivity. I told him I'd never agreed to exclusivity. He asked if I continued talking to other people after we matched. I hesitated. He noticed. He said most people don't realize the app monitors that too. I felt a wave of irritation and then fear mixed together. I told him that was creepy. He said what's creepy is pretending data doesn't exist. My phone buzzed again. Another notification. Connection status updated. I opened it with shaking fingers. It said profile visibility limited due to active acquisition. I stared at the screen. I tried swiping to my matches. Most of them were gone. The list was shorter. I refreshed it. Still shorter. I asked him what active acquisition meant. He said it means the system has identified a strong pairing and is reducing competing variables. Competing variables. Like other people. I felt like I was part of some experiment. I asked if he reported something in the app. He said no. He said he simply responded to prompts when they appeared. I remembered a notification earlier that week asking if I wanted to prioritize one match. I ignored it. He probably didn't. He leaned back in his chair and studied me. He said you don't like the word acquired. I told him no, I don't. He said maybe you prefer chosen. That didn't make it better. I felt trapped in a conversation that sounded like a merger agreement instead of a date. I tried logging out of the app. Error. Session locked. I felt my breathing get shallow. He asked if I felt overwhelmed. I said yes. He nodded calmly. He said that's common during transitions. Transitions into what? I stood up from the table. I told him I was leaving. He didn't grab me. He didn't raise his voice. He just watched. As I walked toward the exit, my phone buzzed one more time. Acquisition finalized. I stopped in the doorway and looked at the screen. His profile picture had disappeared. In its place was a blank silhouette. Under my own profile, the tag now said linked. I left the restaurant without looking back. When I got home, I tried deleting the app. It wouldn't let me. It said account currently integrated. I had to contact support to request removal. They replied the next day with a generic message about account transitions. Transitions. I finally got access back after 3 days. My matches were restored. Except his. His profile no longer existed. No record of our messages. No trace. Like he had been absorbed into something else. Sometimes I wonder if that word was just a glitch. A poorly timed update. But I still remember the look on his face when I asked what it meant. Not confused. Not joking. Certain. Like he had closed a deal. The first thing he wanted to know about me wasn't my favorite color or what I do for fun. It wasn't even my job. It was whether I live alone. He asked it so casually that I almost didn't catch the way of it. We had barely said hi in person before he slipped it into the conversation like it was basic small talk. At the time, I thought maybe he was just making conversation about living situations. Now I think that was the only part of the conversation that really mattered to him. His name was Daniel. We matched on a dating app I downloaded after moving into a bigger apartment with my friend Kayla. We've been roommates for 2 years now, splitting rent in a place that's honestly too nice for what we both make. 3rd floor, corner unit, big windows. I always feel safer not live alone. Daniel's profile looked normal enough. Slightly serious expression in every photo. One a hiking trail. One sitting in what looked like a home office. His bio said he worked remotely and valued privacy. I didn't think much of that at first. Lots of people like privacy. We messaged for about a week. He wasn't overly charming, but he was steady. He asked thoughtful questions. He remembered details. He asked what time I usually got home from work, which I brushed off as simple curiosity. We agreed to meet at this small Italian place tucked between a laundromat and a pet store. It's not fancy, but it's busy and bright. I like that. When I got there, he was already seated near the back. He stood up when I approached and gave a polite smile. Nothing about him screamed danger. If anything, he seemed slightly stiff, like he didn't date much. The first 20 minutes were fine. We talked about work. He works from home doing some kind of freelance coding. He asked about my job at a daycare center. I told him about messy art projects and kids who refuse to nap. He nodded politely. Then he asked where I live. I told him the neighborhood. He asked if I had my own place. I said I share an apartment with my roommate Kayla. That's when his expression changed. Not dramatically. Just a small frown. Barely there. But I noticed it. He looked down at his plate for a second and then back at me. He asked how long we've lived together. I said 2 years. He nodded slowly, like he was processing something he didn't like. I joked that I could never afford the place on my own. He didn't laugh. Instead, he asked if she was home most nights. That question made my stomach tighten slightly. I told him we both have pretty regular schedules. He asked if she ever travels. I said sometimes. He asked how often. I started feeling uncomfortable. I told him not very often. He leaned back in his chair and took a slow sip of water. The vibe shifted. Not loud. Not obvious. Just subtle. He asked if I ever wished I'd live alone. I said sometimes, but I like having someone around. He nodded again, but this time it felt like disappointment. We tried to steer the conversation back to normal topics. Movies, music, food. But every now and then he circled back. He asked if our apartment building had security cameras. If guests needed to be buzzed in. If the front door locked automatically. It felt less like curiosity and more like mapping. I asked him why he was so interested. He shrugged and said he values safety. He said living alone can be risky. That statement hung in the air. I told him I don't live alone. He frowned again. Small. Controlled. But definitely there. Halfway through dinner, he excused himself to the restroom. I took that moment to text Kayla, just casually telling her the date was a little weird. She replied instantly telling me to be careful. When he came back, he sat down and looked more focused. Like he had decided something. He asked if Kayla had a boyfriend. I said yes. He asked if the boyfriend stayed over often. I said sometimes. He nodded slowly. Then he asked if she was home tonight. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I asked why it mattered. He gave a small smile and said he just likes to understand people's living dynamics. Living dynamics. That phrase sounded rehearsed. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a notification from the dating app. Profile updated. I frowned and opened it. His profile had changed. Under his bio, a new line had appeared. Seeking independent arrangement. I felt a chill run through me. I refreshed it. Still there. I looked up at him. He was watching my face again. Calm. He asked what changed. I turned the phone slightly so he could see. He glanced at it and then shrugged. He said sometimes preferences evolve in real time. I told him that sounded calculated. He said everything is calculated. The way he said it felt cold. I tried to keep my voice steady and asked if living with someone was a deal breaker. He said it complicates things. I asked what things. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked if Kayla knew I was here. I said yes. He asked if she knew where. I said yes. He leaned back and let out a slow breath. Like that information annoyed him. He finished his drink and looked around the restaurant briefly before returning his gaze to me. He said most people underestimate how much roommates interfere with plans. Plans. That word hit harder than I expected. I asked what kind of plans. He didn't answer. Instead, he asked if I ever thought about moving out on my own. I said not anytime soon. He nodded once. Then he picked up his phone. A few seconds later, mine buzzed again. Dating app notification. Match removed. I opened it. He had unmatched me. while sitting directly across from me. I looked up. He didn't seem embarrassed or awkward. He just said sometimes compatibility shifts when new information comes to light. New information. Like my roommate. I stood up then. I told him I was leaving. He didn't argue. He didn't try to stop me. He just watched quietly. As I walked out of the restaurant, my phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. The message said next time, try it alone. My heart pounded in my chest. I blocked the number immediately. When I got home, Kayla was on the couch watching TV. I told her everything. She laughed it off at first. When I showed her the message, she stopped laughing. 2 days later, we noticed someone had tried to buzz our apartment at 1:13 a.m. Neither of us were expecting anyone. The building's entry system logs attempts. The number that tried to buzz matched the unknown number that texted me. We reported it to the building manager. He said he'd keep an eye out. I deleted the dating app that night. Sometimes I still think about that small frown on his face when I said I had a roommate. Like I ruined something he had already planned out in his head. She didn't say it like a joke. If she had laughed after or even smiled, I probably would have brushed it off. But she didn't. She just looked at me across the table and said she'd met someone like me before. Then she described exactly how it ended, and the worst part was how specific she was. I should have left right then. Her name was Rowan. We matched on a dating app I downloaded after my last relationship crashed in a slow, embarrassing way. I live alone in a small basement apartment that always smells faintly like laundry detergent from the upstairs unit. Dating felt easier than sitting with my own thoughts. Rowan's profile was different from most. No overly posed selfies, no group photos. Just one clear picture of her sitting on a park bench at night, streetlight above her. Her bio said she was good at spotting patterns in people. I thought that sounded deep in a cool way. We talked for about 9 days before meeting. She was sharp, quick replies. She remembered details I mentioned casually, like the fact that I hate mushrooms and that I set my alarm 10 minutes earlier than I need to just to lie there awake. It felt flattering. We agreed to meet at this late-night dessert cafe that stays open until midnight. It's bright inside, all white walls, and neon signs, kind of loud because of the espresso machine constantly hissing. When I walked in, she was already seated near the back wall. She looked exactly like her picture. Same straight posture, same focused eyes. The first half hour felt fine. We ordered milkshakes, talked about work. I told her I work in insurance claims, mostly reviewing accident reports and processing paperwork. She said she worked in behavioral research. I asked what that meant, and she said she studies decision-making patterns. That phrase stuck with me. About 40 minutes in, after we had already gone through the usual first date topics, she leaned forward slightly and looked at me like she was trying to measure something. Then she said she'd met someone like me before. I laughed lightly and asked what that meant. She didn't laugh. She said same job type, same apartment setup, same habit of pushing his sleeves up when nervous. I looked down at my arms. I was pushing my sleeves up. I hadn't even realized. She kept going. She said he also lived alone. Basement apartment too. Worked long hours. Didn't have many close friends nearby. My stomach tightened. I asked how that ended. She didn't hesitate. She said it ended quietly. That word hung in the air. Quietly. She described how he stopped responding to texts one night. How he didn't show up to work the next day. How his phone went straight to voicemail. She said people assumed he moved away. No one looked too closely. I felt my chest get tight. I asked if she was serious. She nodded slightly. She said she wasn't responsible. That made it worse. She said she just observed. Observed what? She said she noticed the pattern before it happened. She said men like that isolate themselves without realizing it. It makes small choices that narrow their world. Less social contact. More routine. Fewer interruptions. I tried to laugh it off, saying that sounded dramatic. She tilted her head slightly. She said patterns don't care about drama. They just complete. I felt like the noise of the cafe faded slightly. Like we were in a bubble. I asked if she ever found out what happened to him. She said she didn't need to. That sentence felt cold. I asked why she was telling this. She said because she recognizes the same pattern forming. In me. I felt irritation rise under the fear. I told her she didn't know me that well. She nodded calmly. She said I know enough. She started listing things I'd told her over the past week. How I usually order takeout instead of cooking. How I don't talk to my neighbors. How I don't have family nearby. How I spend most weekends alone. Hearing it all at once made it sound darker than it felt. She said isolation is rarely sudden. It's gradual. She said the other guy also thought everything was fine. Until it wasn't. I asked what that meant. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked if anyone would notice if I skipped work tomorrow. I said of course they would. She asked how long it would take. A day. 2. I didn't like that question. My phone buzzed on the table. A notification from the dating app. I glanced down automatically. Profile suggestion updated. I frowned and opened it. Under Roan's profile, a small tag had appeared. Recurring match. I had never seen that label before. I refreshed it. Still there. I looked up at her. She was watching my face carefully. She said the app recognizes familiarity. I asked what that meant. She said when someone fits a previous data set closely enough, the system flags it. My stomach dropped. I asked if she meant the other guy. She nodded once. I felt I was sitting in someone else's story, like I was filling a blank space. I told her that was ridiculous. She said maybe. But she pulled out her phone and showed me something. A screenshot of her old chat history, with someone whose profile picture looked unsettlingly similar to mine. Not identical, but close enough that my chest tightened. Same haircut. Same kind of smile. Same job field listed. The last message in the screenshot was from him. It said he felt overwhelmed and needed space. The timestamp was from months ago. She scrolled down. There were no messages after that. No goodbye. No closure. Just silence. She said sometimes silence is the cleanest ending. I felt my pulse in my ears. I asked if she thought I would disappear too. She shrugged lightly. She said statistically it was likely. I stood up then. I told her this was weird and I didn't like where the conversation was going. She didn't try to stop me. She just said something quietly about how leaving early accelerates the pattern. That phrase stuck with me. Accelerates the pattern. I left the cafe and walked straight to my car. My phone buzzed again as I got inside. A new message from her. It said this is where he left too. I blocked her immediately. Deleted the app when I got home. But that night, lying in my basement apartment, her words replayed in my head. Men like you narrow your world. I started noticing things I hadn't before. How quiet it was. How little anyone would hear if I shouted. The next morning, I overslept. Missed my first meeting at work. 3 missed calls from my manager. For a split second, I thought about not calling back. Just to see. Then I felt sick with myself for even considering it. 2 days later, I got an email from an unknown address. Subject line. Pattern complete. There was no body text. Just an attachment. A recent photo of my apartment building. Taken from across the street. I haven't heard from her since. But sometimes when I catch our reflection in a dark window, I wonder if she's right. If I'm just repeating someone else's ending. I thought it was just bad Wi-Fi. That's how it started. A tiny glitch. The app froze for half a second while I was sitting across from a guy I barely knew, pretending to be interested in what he was saying about his gym routine. I almost ignored it. If I had, maybe the rest of the night would have played out normal. Instead, I looked down and saw my own name counting down. His name was Trevor. We matched on a dating app I'd been using off and on for about a year. I live alone in a small apartment near campus, and I get bored easily, especially on weeknights. Trevor seemed normal enough. Clean photos. One at a beach. One in a button-down shirt at what looked like a wedding. His bio said he worked in project management and liked spontaneous plans. We talked for about 5 days before meeting. He was consistent. Quick replies. Not too intense. He asked what I studied, what my schedule looked like, what days I was usually free. It felt normal at the time. We agreed to meet at this outdoor food hall that's always busy on weekends. String lights overhead, long wooden tables, loud music from a speaker near the bar. It's public and crowded, which I prefer for first dates. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at one of the communal tables with 2 drinks in front of him. He smiled when he saw me stood up, gave me a quick hug. Nothing felt off. The first part of the date was fine. We talked about classes, work, random stuff about social media trends. He was easy to talk to. Not awkward, not overly confident. About an hour in, while he was telling me a story about a work project that went wrong, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down automatically. Dating app notification. I frowned because I had already matched with him and wasn't swiping on anyone else that night. The notification preview didn't make sense. Session update in progress. I tapped it without thinking. The app opened, but didn't load the usual home screen. Instead, the background went dark gray. My profile picture appeared in the center. Under it was my full first name. And below that, a digital countdown timer. 14:59. It started ticking down immediately. 14:58. 14:57. My stomach dropped. I thought it was some kind of weird ad or bug. I refreshed the app. The screen flickered, but the timer stayed. 14:42. 14:41. I felt my pulse quicken. I looked up at Trevor. He was still talking mid-story, but his eyes flicked down to my phone briefly. I asked him to repeat what he just said, trying to keep my voice steady. He did, but he seemed distracted now. I looked back at the screen. Under the timer, a small line of text appeared. Evaluation phase active. My hands felt cold. I locked my phone and put it face down. Maybe it would reset. Maybe it was just a glitch. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I tried to focus on the conversation. He asked about my family. I answered automatically. He asked if I live alone. I said yes. He nodded slowly, like he expected that answer. My phone buzzed again. Even though it was face down, I saw the light from the screen. I flipped it over. The timer was still there. 12:03. 12:02. I swallowed hard. I tried closing the app completely. When I reopened it, the timer resumed at 11:47. Like it had been running in the background. Under my name, another line of text appeared. Proximity confirmed. I felt my chest tighten. I glanced around the food hall. Everything looked normal. People eating tacos. Couples laughing. Kids running between tables. Normal. I looked back at Trevor. He was watching me now. Not smiling. Not frowning. Just watching. I asked him if his app was acting weird. He tilted his head slightly and said, "What do you mean?" I turned my phone toward him. He leaned in. His expression didn't change much. He said that's strange. But his voice sounded flat. I asked if he had anything like that on his phone. He pulled his out slowly. Unlocked it. Turned it toward me. His screen looked normal. Just the regular dating app homepage. No timer. No dark background. I felt stupid for even asking. I told him mine must be glitching. He nodded. But he didn't look surprised. The timer kept ticking. 9:15. 9:14. My heart was racing now. I tried logging out of my account. The app wouldn't let me. Error message. Active session cannot be terminated. I felt like the air around me got heavier. Trevor asked if I was okay. I said I just needed a minute. I stood up from the table, then walked toward the restroom area. The timer continued. 7:32. 7:31. I locked myself in a stall and tried deleting the app entirely. The icon disappeared from my home screen. But when I searched for it again in my phone settings, it showed as still installed. And when I tapped it from there, it opened back to the timer. 6:48. 6:47. Underneath, another line of text appeared. Behavioral response within expected range. I felt sick. Expected range. Like I was being monitored. I went to airplane mode. No difference. The timer kept running. 5-3. 5-2. I stepped back out into the food hall. Trevor was still sitting at the table. He hadn't moved. He hadn't ordered more food. He was just waiting. Watching. I walked back slowly. I asked him if he ever seen anything like this before. He paused for a second before answering. That pause made my stomach twist. He said sometimes apps test features in real time. Test features. On me. My phone buzzed again. 4:10. 4:09. A new message appeared below the timer. Subject remains unsight. I looked up sharply. He held my gaze. His face was calm. Too calm. I asked him if he was messing with me. He said, "Why would I do that?" But his tone felt rehearsed. The timer dropped under 3 minutes. People around us kept laughing, eating, completely unaware. I thought about running. Just getting in my car and driving somewhere random. But part of me wanted to see what would happen when it hit 0. Which scares me now. The timer hit 1 o'clock. 59. 60. My breathing felt shallow. Trevor leaned slightly closer across the table. He said sometimes people don't like knowing how long they have. That sentence made my chest feel tight. I asked how long I had for what. He didn't answer. 30 seconds. 29. 30. My phone vibrated harder now, almost aggressively. 10. 11. 12. Trevor didn't blink. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. The timer hit 0. The screen went black for half a second. Then it refreshed to the normal app interface. No timer. No messages. Just the usual swipe screen. Like nothing happened. I stared at it, breathing hard. Trevor asked if it was fixed. I nodded slowly. He smiled slightly. Relieved. Too relieved. I left 10 minutes later saying I wasn't feeling well. He didn't try to stop me. When I got home, I checked the app again. Everything looked normal. Except under my profile settings, there was a new section I had never seen before. Session history. Under it, one entry. Completed. No details. Just that. I deleted the app that night. But sometimes when my phone lags for even a second, my heart starts racing. Because I keep wondering what would have happened if I left before the timer hit 0. Or if I stayed longer. I've had bad dates before. Awkward silences. Guys who lied about their height. One who talked about his ex the entire time. None of that compares to the moment she turned her laptop toward me and I saw my name in a folder between 2 other men I'd never heard of. She didn't rush it either. That's what makes it worse when I think back. She scrolled slowly, like she wanted me to see all of them before landing on mine. Her name was Celeste. We matched on a dating app I'd been using casually for a few months. I live alone in a small townhouse near the edge of the city, and after work I usually just sit on my couch scrolling through my phone. She seemed different from most matches. Her profile had this confident vibe. One photo of her at a bookstore. One sitting on a rooftop at night. Her bio said she liked patterns and long conversations. We talked for about a week and a half. She asked thoughtful questions. Not just what do you do for fun. More like how do you react when someone cancels plans last minute? Or what's the first thing you notice about a room when you walk in? It felt interesting, like she was actually curious. We agreed to meet at a quiet wine bar tucked inside a renovated warehouse. Exposed brick walls, dim lighting, soft music that almost blends into the background. It felt intimate but still public. She was already seated when I walked in. Laptop bag on the chair next to her. I remember noticing that and thinking maybe she came straight from work. The first hour was normal. We talked about work. I told her I manage inventory for a mid-sized retail chain. Mostly spreadsheets and supplier calls. She said she worked in research. I asked what kind, and she said behavioral analysis. I didn't think much of it. She was easy to talk to. Calm, direct eye contact. She didn't fidget or look at her phone constantly like some people do. About an hour in, after we had finished our second drinks, she reached into her bag and pulled out her laptop. I laughed lightly and asked if she had homework. She smiled slightly and said something about always keeping notes. I thought she meant journaling or something harmless. She opened the laptop and typed in her password without rushing. The screen glowed softly in the dim light of the bar. She clicked into a folder on her desktop. The folder name was simple: Profiles. Inside it were subfolders, each one labeled with a man's first name. I felt a small knot form in my stomach. At first I assumed it was old work files, but then I recognized one of the names. It was the name of a guy I'd seen on the app before. Not someone I knew personally, just someone whose profile had popped up more than once. She scrolled slowly through the list. I counted at least 15 names. Then she stopped. My name was there, between two others. Same font, same formatting, just my first name. My chest felt tight. I asked what that was. She looked at me calmly and said those were her notes. On what? On dates. She hovered her cursor over my folder but didn't click it yet. She asked if I wanted to see the notes. My heart started pounding. I tried to laugh it off, saying that was intense. She tilted her head slightly and said she believes in documentation. She said memory is unreliable. Notes are not. I felt exposed in a way I can't fully describe. We had only met in person that night. What notes could she possibly have? She clicked on another name first. Not mine. The screen filled with a document. Bullet points. Observations. It listed things like tendency to interrupt, avoids eye contact when discussing family, defensive humor when challenged. It wasn't flattering. It wasn't cruel either. Just clinical. Like a case study. She scrolled down. There were timestamps from multiple dates. A final section labeled outcome. Under that name, it said disengage after pattern confirmation. My mouth felt dry. She closed that folder and looked back at me. She said she keeps detailed records to track behavioral consistency. I asked if the other guys knew. She shrugged and said some did. Then she moved the cursor over my name again. My chest tightened. She asked if I wanted to see what she had so far. So far. That phrase stuck. I asked how much she had. She said enough to identify trends. My mind started racing. We had messaged for over a week before meeting. She had my texts, my voice notes, my social media. She clicked. The folder opened. Inside was a document labeled Initial Observations. She turned the laptop slightly so I could see. At the top was my name. Underneath it were bullet points. Prefers control of conversation flow. Checks phone every 12 to 15 minutes. Laughs before answering uncomfortable questions. I felt my face get hot. I didn't realize I was that predictable. She scrolled further. She had notes from our messages. Uses short sentences when stressed. Avoids answering directly when topic shifts to personal history. I felt exposed. Not because the notes were false, but because they were accurate. Too accurate. She scrolled to the bottom of the document. There was a section labeled Projected Outcome. I swallowed hard. Under it, she had written likely withdrawal within 3 to 4 weeks once vulnerability threshold reached. My stomach dropped. I asked what that meant. She said men with my communication style tend to disengage once emotional expectations increase. She said she's seen it before. I asked if she was testing me. She said not testing. Tracking. That word made my skin feel cold. She leaned back slightly and studied my reaction. She said, "You're already shifting posture." I realized I was leaning away from the table. She added a new bullet point in real time. Physical retreat when confronted with analysis. I felt trapped. Like every move I made just confirmed something she already believed. I asked why she did this. She said it saves time. She said patterns are clearer when documented. I glanced at the other folders again. All those names. All those notes. I wondered how many of them had read what she wrote about them. I asked what happens after pattern confirmation. She closed the laptop slowly. She said sometimes she ends things. Sometimes she accelerates them. Accelerates them how? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked again if I wanted to see the rest of my notes. There was more. I shook my head. She nodded calmly, like she expected that response. I stood up from the table. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. People nearby glanced over briefly. She didn't try to stop me. She just watched. As I reached for my jacket, she said something softly about how this reaction fits the projection. That sentence hit harder than anything else she said. Fits the projection. Like I was completing a script. I left the bar without looking back. When I got home, I checked the dating app. Her profile was still there. No change. No hint of what she was doing behind the scenes. 2 days later, I got an email from an unknown address. The subject line was my name. Inside was a PDF attachment. I didn't open it at first, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a document from her folder. Updated. At the bottom, under projected outcome, it now said disengaged upon exposure to documentation. There was a final line I hadn't seen before. Pattern confirmed. I haven't used dating apps since. And sometimes I wonder how many other folders are out there with my name in them. I've had bad dates before. Awkward silences. Guys who lied about their height. One who talked about his ex the entire time. None of that compares to the moment she turned her laptop toward me and I saw my name in a folder between 2 other men I'd never heard of. She didn't rush it either. That's what makes it worse when I think back. She scrolled slowly, like she wanted me to see all of them before landing on mine. Her name was Celeste. We matched on a dating app I'd been using casually for a few months. I live alone in a small townhouse near the edge of the city, and after work I usually just sit on my couch scrolling through my phone. She seemed different from most matches. Her profile had this confident vibe. One photo of her at a bookstore. One sitting on a rooftop at night. Her bio said she liked patterns and long conversations. We talked for about a week and a half. She asked thoughtful questions. Not just what do you do for fun. More like how do you react when someone cancels plans last minute? Or what's the first thing you notice about a room when you walk in? It felt interesting, like she was actually curious. We agreed to meet at a quiet wine bar tucked inside a renovated warehouse. Exposed brick walls, dim lighting, soft music that almost blends into the background. It felt intimate but still public. She was already seated when I walked in. Laptop bag on the chair next to her. I remember noticing that and thinking maybe she came straight from work. The first hour was normal. We talked about work. I told her I manage inventory for a mid-sized retail chain. Mostly spreadsheets and supplier calls. She said she worked in research. I asked what kind, and she said behavioral analysis. I didn't think much of it. She was easy to talk to. Calm. Direct eye contact. She didn't fidget or look at her phone constantly like some people do. About an hour in, after we had finished our second drinks, she reached into her bag and pulled out her laptop. I laughed lightly and asked if she had homework. She smiled slightly and said something about always keeping notes. I thought she meant journaling or something harmless. She opened the laptop and typed in her password without rushing. The screen glowed softly in the dim light of the bar. She clicked into a folder on her desktop. The folder name was simple. Profiles. Inside it were subfolders, each one labeled with a man's first name. I felt a small knot form in my stomach. At first I assumed it was old work files. But then I recognized one of the names. It was the name of a guy I'd seen on the app before. Not someone I knew personally, just someone whose profile had popped up more than once. She scrolled slowly through the list. I counted at least 15 names. Then she stopped. My name was there, between 2 others. Same font, same formatting, just my first name. My chest felt tight. I asked what that was. She looked at me calmly and said those were her notes. On what? On dates. She hovered her cursor over my folder but didn't click it yet. She asked if I wanted to see the notes. My heart started pounding. I tried to laugh it off, saying that was intense. She tilted her head slightly and said she believes in documentation. She said memory is unreliable. Notes are not. I felt exposed in a way I can't fully describe. We had only met in person that night. What notes could she possibly have? She clicked on another name first. Not mine. The screen filled with a document. Bullet points. Observations. It listed things like tendency to interrupt, avoids eye contact when discussing family, defensive humor when challenged. It wasn't flattering. It wasn't cruel either. Just clinical. Like a case study. She scrolled down. There were timestamps from multiple dates. A final section labeled outcome. Under that name, it said disengage after pattern confirmation. My mouth felt dry. She closed that folder and looked back at me. She said she keeps detailed records to track behavioral consistency. I asked if the other guys knew. She shrugged and said some did. Then she moved the cursor over my name again. My chest tightened. She asked if I wanted to see what she had so far. So far. That phrase stuck. I asked how much she had. She said enough to identify trends. My mind started racing. We had messaged for over a week before meeting. She had my texts, my voice notes, my social media. She clicked. The folder opened. Inside was a document labeled Initial Observations. She turned the laptop slightly so I could see. At the top was my name. Underneath it were bullet points. Prefers control of conversation flow. Checks phone every 12 to 15 minutes. Laughs before answering uncomfortable questions. I felt my face get hot. I didn't realize I was that predictable. She scrolled further. She had notes from our messages. Uses short sentences when stressed. Avoids answering directly when topic shifts to personal history. I felt exposed. Not because the notes were false, but because they were accurate. Too accurate. She scrolled to the bottom of the document. There was a section labeled Projected Outcome. I swallowed hard. Under it, she had written likely withdrawal within 3 to 4 weeks once vulnerability threshold reached. My stomach dropped. I asked what that meant. She said men with my communication style tend to disengage once emotional expectations increase. She said she's seen it before. I asked if she was testing me. She said not testing. Tracking. That word made my skin feel cold. She leaned back slightly and studied my reaction. She said, "You're already shifting posture." I realized I was leaning away from the table. She added a new bullet point in real time. Physical retreat when confronted with analysis. I felt trapped. Like every move I made just confirmed something she already believed. I asked why she did this. She said it saves time. She said patterns are clearer when documented. I glanced at the other folders again. All those names. All those notes. I wondered how many of them had read what she wrote about them. I asked what happens after pattern confirmation. She closed the laptop slowly. She said sometimes she ends things. Sometimes she accelerates them. Accelerates them how? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked again if I wanted to see the rest of my notes. There was more. I shook my head. She nodded calmly, like she expected that response. I stood up from the table. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. People nearby glanced over briefly. She didn't try to stop me. She just watched. As I reached for my jacket, she said something softly about how this reaction fits the projection. That sentence hit harder than anything else she said. Fits the projection. Like I was completing a script. I left the bar without looking back. When I got home, I checked the dating app. Her profile was still there. No change. No hint of what she was doing behind the scenes. 2 days later, I got an email from an unknown address. The subject line was my name. Inside was a PDF attachment. I didn't open it at first, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a document from her folder. Updated. At the bottom, under projected outcome, it now said disengaged upon exposure to documentation. There was a final line I hadn't seen before. Pattern confirmed. I haven't used dating apps since. And sometimes I wonder how many other folders are out there with my name in them. I knew I should have stood up 10 minutes earlier. There's always that moment in a bad date where you feel it turning. Not dramatic, not loud. Just a small shift in the air, like something invisible locking into place. I felt it when she started asking questions that didn't match the tone of the night. I ignored it. I stayed seated. And then she leaned in close enough that I could feel her breath near my ear and said, "If you try to leave right now, I'll make it very difficult." She didn't smile when she said it. Her name was Nadia. We matched on a dating app I downloaded out of boredom after a long week at work. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment near the highway, and most nights I just cook something simple and scroll until I fall asleep. Nadia seemed different from most matches. Her photos were sharp and confident. One in a business suit, one at what looked like a charity event. Her bio said she worked in legal consulting and believed in leverage. That word should have meant something to me earlier. We talked for about a week. She was smart, direct. She didn't waste time with small talk. She asked what I did for work, how long I'd been in my field, whether I planned to stay in the city long term. I work in its support for a mid-sized company. Nothing glamorous. Just systems, tickets, and troubleshooting. She suggested dinner at a rooftop lounge downtown. Not the loud club type. More upscale. Low music, dim lighting, tall glass railings overlooking the city. When I got there, she was already seated at a small corner table. She looked exactly like her pictures. Straight posture, sharp eyes, calm expression. She stood up briefly to greet me and then sat down, crossing one leg over the other. The first half hour was normal. We talked about work, travel, random things about the city. She was intense but not unfriendly. She listened closely when I spoke, like she was memorizing details. Then the questions started shifting. She asked if I live alone. I said yes. She nodded. She asked if I owned or rented. I said rented. She asked if anyone else had keys. I laughed lightly and said no, why would they? She didn't laugh. She just took a slow sip of her drink. She asked if I had many close friends nearby. I said a few. She asked if they checked in often. That question made my stomach tighten slightly. I shrugged and said not daily or anything. She nodded again, like that information mattered more than it should. About an hour in, I started feeling uneasy. Not because of anything obvious, just the pattern of her questions. They weren't about hobbies or movies. They were about my structure, my routines, my access points. I checked my phone casually, thinking maybe I'd call it an early night. She noticed. Her eyes dropped to my phone, then back to my face. She asked if I was planning to leave. I said maybe soon. I had an early morning. She leaned back slowly, studying me. Then she leaned forward again. Closer. Close enough that her voice didn't need to be loud. And she said if you try to leave right now, I'll make it very difficult. My heart thudded hard in my chest. For a second, I thought I misheard her. But her face didn't change. No smile. No joking tone. Just calm certainty. I asked what she meant. She tilted her head slightly and said leaving abruptly can create misunderstandings. Misunderstandings how? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she glanced at her phone on the table. My phone buzzed at that exact moment. I looked down. Dating app notification. Profile update in progress. I frowned and opened it. My profile photo was still there. But under my name, a small banner had appeared. Flagged for conduct review. My stomach dropped. I refreshed it. Still there. I looked up at her. She was watching me carefully. She said the app takes user reports seriously. My pulse started racing. I asked if she reported me. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just said sometimes first impressions matter more than people think. I felt anger rising under the fear. I said I hadn't done anything wrong. She nodded calmly. She said intent and perception are different things. My phone buzzed again. Another notification. Temporary visibility restriction applied. I felt dizzy. I barely use that app, but the idea that my profile was suddenly restricted felt invasive. She leaned back again, folding her hands neatly on the table. She said leaving mid-date can sometimes be interpreted as aggressive behavior. Aggressive. I almost laughed at how absurd that sounded. But she didn't look like she was joking. I asked if she was threatening me. She raised her eyebrows slightly, like she was surprised by that word. She said no, she was explaining consequences. Consequences for what? For failing to communicate clearly. I felt trapped in a conversation that was twisting itself into something else. I tried to keep my voice steady and said I just wanted to head home. She leaned in again, even closer this time. Her expression didn't change. And she repeated that if I tried to leave right now, she would make it very difficult. This time slower. More deliberate. I glanced around the rooftop. Other tables were occupied, couples laughing, groups of friends taking pictures. Normal. No one paying attention to us. She said she could call the manager over and describe behavior that would raise concerns. She said public spaces rely on perception. She said once a narrative starts, it spreads quickly. My heart was pounding so loud I felt it in my ears. I realized what she was implying. Not physical harm. Reputation. Social consequences. A scene. A report. My phone buzzed again. Another app notification. User complaint received. I felt sick. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't touched her. But suddenly I was flagged. She watched my face carefully. She said, "You don't want complications." That word felt heavy. Complications. I swallowed hard and sat back down fully. I told her we could finish the drink. She nodded, satisfied. For the next 20 minutes, she talked casually about work like nothing had happened. I barely processed any of it. I kept checking my app discreetly. The banner remained. Flagged for conduct review. When she finally stood up to leave, she smiled slightly. She said communication prevents difficulty. Then she walked toward the elevator without looking back. I stayed seated for another 5 minutes before standing up. I left normally. Paid the bill. Walked out calmly. When I got home, I checked the dating app again. My account was suspended pending review. No explanation. Just that. I tried contacting support. Automated response. Under review. 3 days later, I received an email saying my account had been reinstated due to insufficient evidence. No apology. No details. I never heard from Nadia again. But sometimes I think about how calm she looked when she said she would make it difficult. Not angry. Not emotional. Just certain. Like she'd done it before. I knew something was off before he even said it. It wasn't anything obvious like a creepy smile or weird comment right away. It was the way he kept checking his phone. Not casually. Not like someone bored. It was tense. Quick glances. Screen lighting up his face. Jaw tightening. Like he was waiting for something to happen and it wasn't happening fast enough. Then he muttered that I was taking longer than the others. He didn't mean to say it loud enough for me to hear, but he did. His name was Colin. We matched on a dating app I downloaded after my last date ended in a painfully awkward hug and nothing else. I live alone in a small apartment near the college campus, and most of my friends are either busy with work or in relationships. So I scroll. That's what I do. Colin's profile looked normal, maybe a little stiff. One photo at a bowling alley. One sitting in his car. His bio said he liked efficient people and clear communication. I didn't think much of it. We talked for about a week before meeting. He was polite but direct. He asked what I was studying, what my daily routine looked like, what kind of places I'd like to hang out. Nothing too weird. He did ask how long my dates usually lasted, which I thought was random, but I joked about it and moved on. We agreed to meet at a small arcade bar downtown, not a club. More like retro games and cheap drinks. It was busy enough to feel safe. When I got there, he was already at one of the high-top tables near the back. He looked slightly different from his photos. Same face, but more tense, like he was bracing for something. We ordered drinks. He checked his phone while the bartender was pouring them. Quick glance. Lock screen. Another glance. The first 15 minutes felt fine. We talked about school. He works in data analysis. He described his job in terms of tracking patterns and timing. He said timing is everything. He checked his phone again. I asked if everything was okay. He nodded too quickly. Said yes. But his leg was bouncing under the table. About 20 minutes in, while I was telling him about a professor who makes us redo assignments for minor mistakes, his phone buzzed again. He looked at it immediately. His expression changed. Not angry. Not happy. Just irritated. He muttered something under his breath. I caught it. You're taking longer than the others. My stomach tightened. I asked what he meant. He looked up like he forgot I was there. Then he forced a smile and said nothing. I didn't laugh. I asked who the others were. He hesitated, just for a second, then said he meant other projects at work. Projects. That word didn't sit right. He kept checking his phone every few minutes after that. Each time, his face grew more tense, like he was waiting for a notification that wasn't coming. I tried to focus on the games around us, the flashing lights, the noise from the skee-ball machine, but my attention kept snapping back to him. He started asking strange questions. How often I leave places early. If I usually ghost people after one date. If I've ever pretended to enjoy myself just to avoid confrontation. It felt less like small talk and more like he was evaluating me. My phone buzzed on the table. Dating app notification. Profile engagement updated. I frowned and opened it. There was nothing new in my messages. But under my profile settings, a new section appeared. Session duration. It showed a timer counting upward. 0:32:14. I blinked. That matched roughly how long we've been sitting there. I refreshed the app. The timer continued. 0:32:27. I felt a chill run through me. I asked him if he'd ever seen this before. He glanced at my screen. For a split second, I saw recognition. Then he shook his head. Said apps update features all the time. But his jaw tightened again. His phone buzzed. He looked at it and exhaled sharply. He muttered something about benchmarks. Benchmarks. I felt my heart start to race. I asked if he was timing something. He laughed nervously and said no. But he kept checking his phone. Over and over. Like he was waiting for a signal. The timer on my app hit 0:40:00. A small green checkmark appeared next to it. Underneath, text popped up. Threshold not met. My stomach dropped. I looked up at him slowly. He was staring at his phone, face pale. He whispered again that I was taking longer than the others. This time clearer. I asked what happens when the threshold is met. He looked up at me sharply. Like I wasn't supposed to see that part. He said nothing happens. But his eyes darted toward the entrance. Like he was expecting someone. Or something. My phone buzzed again. Another notification from the app. User response rate within normal range. I felt dizzy. Response to what? I hadn't done anything except sit there. He started tapping his fingers on the table rapidly. His leg bounced faster. He checked his phone again. Then he muttered something about delays. Delays weren't part of the plan. That word made my chest tighten. Plan. I asked him directly what he was waiting for. He hesitated again. Longer this time. Then said he was tracking compatibility. I said that doesn't require a timer. He swallowed. He said sometimes the app runs live trials. Live trials. I felt my skin crawl. The timer on my phone hit 0:45:00. Another notification. Escalation pending. My heart slammed in my chest. I looked around the arcade bar. Nothing seemed different. No one was staring. No one approaching. But the noise felt distant. He suddenly stood up. Then sat back down quickly. Like he wasn't sure what to do. He checked his phone again. This time his expression changed completely. Fear. Real fear. He whispered that this isn't right. I asked what isn't right. He said the others didn't last this long. My stomach dropped. I asked what happened to the others. He didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the entrance again, like he expected someone to walk in at any second. My phone buzzed violently. The timer disappeared, replaced with one word: complete. I felt cold all over. He looked at his phone and went completely still, like something finalized. He whispered no, just once. Then he stood up abruptly and said he needed air. He walked toward the exit without looking back. I stayed frozen in my seat for a few seconds before grabbing my bag and following at a distance. When I stepped outside, he was gone. No sign of him. No car pulling away. Nothing. Just the normal street noise. I checked the dating app again. His profile was gone. Not unmatched. Gone. Deleted. Under my session history, there was a single entry. Duration met. No details. Just that. I deleted the app that night. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd left earlier, or if I'd stayed longer. And sometimes I think about the way he looked at his phone at the end. Like whatever he was waiting for finally decided something. I thought she was joking at first. That's the messed up part. We were sitting in a normal place with normal background noise, normal drinks sweating on the table, and she said something that should have sounded insane. Instead, she said it calmly, like she was thanking a waiter for refilling her glass. She thanked me for cooperating and said she hoped the app would stop suggesting replacements now. Replacements. Like I was a broken part she finally fixed. Her name was Ilara. We matched on a dating app I downloaded after my best friend got engaged and suddenly had no time for late-night takeout runs. I live alone in a small condo near the river. It's quiet at night except for the occasional siren echoing off the water. I told myself dating would fill that space. Ilara's profile was different. Not flashy, just clean photos. One in a lab coat. One sitting at a desk with a laptop open. Her bio said she worked in systems optimization and valued efficient outcomes. I thought it sounded nerdy in a cool way. We talked for about 8 days before meeting. She was direct but not rude. She asked questions that felt slightly deeper than usual. What do you do when something stops working? How do you respond when a routine is disrupted? At the time, I thought she just liked metaphors. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe near the art district. Not busy, just soft music, exposed brick walls, small tables spaced far apart. When I walked in, she was already there, laptop closed in front of her. She smiled politely, stood up briefly, and sat down. The first half hour was fine. We talked about work. I handle scheduling for a logistics company. Lots of spreadsheets, route planning, nothing dramatic. She said she worked in algorithm analysis. Something about testing predictive systems. She asked if I use the dating app consistently. I said on and off. She nodded slowly. She asked if I noticed it suggesting similar types of women. I laughed and said, yeah, I guess. She didn't laugh. She said the app learns quickly. That line stayed with me. About 45 minutes in, my phone buzzed on the table. Dating app notification. New suggested match. I didn't open it. Ilara glanced at my phone, then back at me. She asked if it was another suggestion. I said probably. She looked mildly irritated, like the app had interrupted something important. She leaned back slightly and folded her hands. She asked how long I usually talk to someone before losing interest. I shrugged and said it depends. She nodded again. She asked if I ever ghost people. I said sometimes, if the vibe isn't there. She made a small note on her phone. That's when I started feeling uneasy. She said the system doesn't like incomplete cycles. Incomplete cycles. I asked what that meant. She said the app's algorithm tracks engagement patterns and pushes replacements when it predicts failure. Failure. I joked that it's just an app. She looked at me seriously and said nothing is just an app anymore. My phone buzzed again. Another suggested match. I glanced down. The preview showed a profile picture that looked vaguely similar to Ilara. Same dark hair. Same posture. My stomach tightened. I didn't open it. She noticed. She said ignore it. Her tone was sharper now. She said the algorithm tests resilience by introducing alternatives mid-session. Mid-session. Like this wasn't just a date. I asked what she meant by session. She smiled slightly and said, don't worry, we're almost done. Done with what? She leaned forward slightly and lowered her voice. She said, thank you for cooperating. I felt my chest tighten. I asked, cooperating with what? She said, the live compatibility assessment. My heart started pounding. I said, I didn't agree to anything like that. She tilted her head slightly. She said, you clicked accept. That word hit hard. Accept. The terms and conditions when signing up. The little pop-ups asking for feedback. She said the app runs micro-trials when 2 users meet in person. She said it monitors duration, response time, facial cues captured through camera permissions. I felt dizzy. I asked if she was serious. She said she was part of a beta group testing optimization. She said the app sometimes introduces similar profiles to see if a user deviates. My phone buzzed again. Another suggestion. The profile photo looked even more like her now. I felt sick. She glanced at my phone and then back at me. She said it's trying to replace her. Replace. Like she was aware of it. Like she was competing with software. She said she hoped the app would stop suggesting replacements now. She said it calmly. Like she'd just completed something. I asked what she meant by now. She showed me her phone. On her screen was a dashboard I had never seen before. 2 profile pictures side by side. Mine. And hers. Underneath was a progress bar. Engagement stability 97%. Below that, replacement pressure declining. My hands felt cold. I asked how she got access to that. She said testers receive internal metrics. Testers. I felt like I was being evaluated without knowing it. She said the app predicts abandonment rates. She said if I checked one of the suggested matches tonight, it would mark instability. I stared at her. She said most men check within 3 minutes. I realized I hadn't. My phone buzzed again. Another suggestion. This time the name was slightly different, but the face was almost identical to hers. I turned my phone face down. She smiled faintly. She said that helps. Helps what? She said stabilize the pairing. Pairing. Like this was a mutual. Like it was assigned. I asked if she was testing me. She said no. She was preventing replacement. Preventing. I felt trapped in something I didn't understand. She said the app cycles through profiles when engagement drops below a threshold. She said she's been replaced before. That line made my stomach drop. Replaced how? She said the algorithm introduced someone similar mid-date once and the guy followed the suggestion. Her profile was deprioritized. She said she dropped in ranking. Ranking. Like this was a leaderboard. She leaned back and exhaled slowly. She said thank you again for cooperating. She said she hoped the app would stop suggesting replacements now. My phone buzzed one last time. I hesitated before looking. The dating app opened automatically. Instead of a suggestion, there was a small banner at the top. Replacement cycle paused. I felt cold. Paused. Not ended. Paused. I looked up at her. She looked satisfied. Calm. Like she just passed something. I stood up slowly. Told her I needed to go. She didn't try to stop me. She just nodded. She said if you check the suggestions later, it might resume. That sentence followed me all the way home. When I got back to my condo, I opened the app again. No new suggestions. Just her profile at the top of my messages. Pinned. I didn't pin it. Underneath her name was a small tag I'd never seen before. Primary candidate. I deleted the app that night. But 2 days later, I re-downloaded it out of curiosity. Her profile was gone. Replaced by someone who looked eerily similar. Same smile. Different name. Under that profile, a small tag. New cycle. I thought deleting the app would be the end of it. That's how it's supposed to work. You block someone, you delete the app, you move on. Clean break. Digital doors closed. I actually felt relieved when I held my finger down on the icon and watched it disappear from my screen. Like I had taken control back. Then my phone buzzed one last time. Match confirmed. Location locked. I didn't reinstall anything. I didn't tap anything. It just showed up. His name was Garrett. We matched on a dating app I downloaded during a boring Sunday afternoon. I live alone in a studio apartment above a hardware store, and most nights I'd just hear the hum of traffic and the occasional delivery truck backing up. Dating apps feel like noise you can control. Garrett's profile looked harmless, slightly awkward smile. One photo hiking. One sitting in a kitchen that looked too clean to be real. His bio said he worked in logistics and valued precision. That word again. Precision. We talked for about 6 days before meeting. He was quick to respond. Almost too quick. He answered within seconds, no matter the time of day. He asked about my routine. What time I leave for work. Which gym I go to. What grocery store I prefer. It felt like small talk, but looking back, it wasn't. We agreed to meet at a quiet diner on the edge of town, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a neon sign flickering in the window. He was already there when I arrived. Sitting in the corner booth, phone face up on the table, he stood up to greet me, polite, normal. The first 30 minutes were fine. We talked about work. I handle scheduling for a shipping company. He said he optimizes routes for delivery systems. He described his job like it was a puzzle. Inputs, outputs, timing. He kept checking his phone. Not casually. Quick glances. Screen lighting up. Jaw tightening slightly. I asked if he was waiting for something. He said no. But he didn't sound convincing. About halfway through the date, my phone buzzed with a notification from the dating app. Profile synchronization complete. I frowned. I hadn't opened the app in over an hour. I ignored it. He glanced at my phone and smiled faintly. I felt something twist in my stomach. After that, the conversation felt forced. He asked more specific questions. Whether I usually walk home from the diner, if I park in the same spot every time, if I ever take different routes. I gave vague answers. His smile tightened slightly. When the check came, I offered to split. He insisted on paying. Outside, in the parking lot, he asked if I got home safe. I said I'd text him. I never did. Instead, I blocked him the moment I got into my apartment. Blocked his number. Blocked him on the app. Then I deleted the app entirely. I felt relieved. Like I had closed the door. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown notification. I picked it up slowly. No app icon. Just text on my screen. Match confirmed. Location locked. My heart slammed into my ribs. I'd opened my notifications. Nothing there. I checked my messages. Nothing new. But the notification had been real. I know it was. I checked my app store to make sure the dating app was gone. It was. Deleted. I restarted my phone. Told myself it was some glitch. When it powered back on, I felt a small wave of relief. Then my Maps app opened by itself. I didn't tap anything. It just opened. The screen zoomed in on my building. A small red pin dropped directly on top of it. Underneath it, text appeared. Active. My hands felt cold. I tried closing the app. It reopened. The red pin pulsed slightly. I turned off location services entirely. The pin stayed. I switched to airplane mode. Still there. My breathing felt shallow. I closed the Maps app and opened my settings. Everything looked normal. No unknown apps. No strange permissions. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. Unknown number. The message said precision matters. My chest tightened. I didn't reply. I blocked the number immediately. Another buzz. Different unknown number. Route optimized. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I checked my front door. Locked. Checked my windows. Closed. I turned off all the lights in my apartment and stood in the dark for a few seconds listening. Nothing. Just distant traffic. My phone buzzed again. Match confirmed. Location locked. This time it came as a system notification. Not tied to any app. Just plain text at the top of my screen. I threw my phone onto the couch like it burned. It buzzed again. The Maps app reopened. The red pin had shifted slightly. Not on my building. On my exact unit. Like it had zoomed in further. I felt sick. I had unplugged my Wi-Fi router. The signal bars disappeared. The red pin stayed. I powered off my phone completely. Set it on the table. Stared at it. 5 seconds later, it turned back on by itself. The screen lit up. Same red pin. Under it, new text. Connection stabilized. My heart was pounding so loud I thought I might pass out. There was a soft knock at my door. Not loud. Just 3 taps. I froze. My apartment is on the 3rd floor. No one ever knocks at this hour. Another 3 taps. My phone buzzed again. Arrival estimated. I felt like the room was shrinking. I didn't move toward the door. I didn't speak. I just stood there staring at it. The knock stopped. Silence. Then my phone buzzed once more. Location locked. The red pin turned green. I don't remember how long I stood there. Eventually, I forced myself to look through the small security camera feed on my laptop. The hallway outside my door was empty. No one there. No movement. I checked the building entrance camera. No one entering. No one leaving. I called the building manager the next morning. Asked if anyone had been on my floor late at night. He said no. I factory reset my phone that day. Changed my number. Bought a new router. Deleted every account connected to that dating app. For a week, nothing happened. No notifications. No unknown texts. I started to calm down. Then last night, while I was lying in bed, my new phone buzzed. No number attached. No app icon. Just text across the screen. Location verified. I haven't left my apartment since.